Chapter 484. The 6 red-furred monsters didn't dodge at all and continued to attack. The mountains crashed down, and they each threw a punch to meet it. In the fluctuation of origin power, these mountains all cracked but didn't shatter. Pung 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 pung, they were all hit, but only staggered before continuing to attack extremely fierce. Such solid defense. Ling Han nodded. Although it couldn't compare to his body of iron sheet, it was still quite shocking. There were pitifully few spiritual pedestal tier cultivators that could cultivate such defense. Hung only a so. The attacked man sneered and slid back. He raised his sword again, and another 7 flashes of sword chi shot out. Help! The others also knew that the red-furred monsters weren't very powerful, so they naturally had no fear. But at this moment, the 6 red-furred monsters all emitted a bloody light, directly breaking through the man's sword chi, and killing their way to him. 5 of the red-furred monsters grabbed his limbs and head, and the last one grabbed the man's body. Pooh! Under everyone's shocked gazes, the 5 red-furred monsters exerted force at the same time, forcibly tearing off the man's limbs and head. Fresh blood splattered, seemingly dyeing the sky red. Too violent, too bloody. Everyone was stunned. They couldn't accept such a scene. Pa 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 pa. The 6 red-furred monsters all threw away the severed limbs and head in their hands, and set their sights on another person, pouncing together. Suppressed together. Everyone hurriedly shouted. They definitely couldn't be defeated by these 6 red-furred monsters one by one. In the battle between the two sides, the humans naturally had the advantage in terms of numbers, and their battle prowess was stronger. However, these red-furred monsters seemed to be undying monsters. They were stabbed and slashed, but not a single drop of blood spilled, as if they were puppets. Moreover, they had a special ability. When there was a red light on their bodies, they could ignore the bombardment of origin power and directly pass through, causing great trouble for everyone. They obviously had more people and were stronger, but they were beaten into a sorry state by the 6 red-furred monsters. Strange, what ability is this? Ling Han muttered, his eyes flashing with curiosity. Could this be another special ability of the living beings of the God realm? Young Master Han, should we go and help? Guang Yuan asked. Yes, but be careful. Ling Han nodded. Yes. Guang Yuan immediately rushed out. Yukayu scratched his head and said, strange, why do I have to listen to this guy's words? After saying that, he also rushed out, his battle intent soaring. Ling Han did not make a move and only observed carefully. He would act when Guang Yuan and Yukayu were in danger, but at other times, he would observe more. He had never heard of this red-haired monster before, and it was too strange. His gaze swept across, and a look of shock appeared on his face. That was because the pieces of flesh that had been dismembered earlier were undergoing a shocking change. A clump of red hair grew out of the flesh hair, and as if it had a life of its own, its head, arms, and legs wriggled toward the torso. Soon, the 6 parts came together and formed a complete human body, but it was covered in red hair. A new red-furred monster had appeared. A bolt of lightning flashed through Ling Han's mind, and a guess welled up in his mind. These 6 red-furred monsters couldn't be the 6 dried corpses that had been killed at the very beginning, right? He immediately flashed out and unleashed the demon birth sword, slashing at one of the red-furred monsters. In the midst of the sword chi, red hair danced in the air. This red-haired monster was instantly shaved clean by Ling Han, revealing a body that resembled a dried corpse. In fact, there were even a few tattered pieces of cloth on it. Luo Luoheng, a martial artist said with a trembling voice. He's Luoheng. I recognize the tattoo on his arm. Ling Han looked over and sure enough, there was a tattoo on the red-furred monster's arm. Although it was hard to tell, it was still a picture of a fierce tiger. Everyone was shocked. Luoheng was one of the first to enter the 2nd floor, and was turned into a dried corpse by the blood-sucking insects. How did he suddenly become a red-furred monster and come back to life? Another one, someone found the 7th red-furred monster, although it had just stood up shakily and hadn't joined the battle yet. Where's Su Ming's corpse? Someone asked with a trembling voice. Everyone was speechless. This dried corpse could become a red-furred monster, so why couldn't it be torn apart? What kind of damned place was this? The dead could also come back to life, although it couldn't be considered a true resurrection. Ling Han drew his sword and activated the two vein-like patterns on the demon birth sword. He didn't believe that even a 10th tier spirit tool couldn't kill these monsters. Pew pew pew, his figure flashed, and one sword strike after another, chopping the red-furred monster into two pieces. However, a strange scene appeared. The two pieces of the red-furred monster actually stuck together again, becoming one again. An undead monster. Ling Han made a prompt decision and said, "Go to the 3rd floor." Yu Kai-yu and Guang Yuan obviously didn't have the slightest objection to his words, and immediately climbed up the stairs, charging towards the 3rd floor. Ling Han put away the demon birth sword and also leapt up the stairs. Even a powerful battle prowess like Ling Han ran away, so how would the others dare to tangle with them? These red-furred monsters couldn't be killed at all, and even if someone hit a spiritual infant tier law decree, could it suppress them? Although Ling Han came up the stairs later than Guang Yuan and Yu Kai-yu, he caught up, and with a big stride, he was the first to enter the 3rd floor. The scenery immediately changed. This was actually a primeval forest, with tall trees everywhere and countless old vines tangled together, thicker than houses. Who knew how many years it had been growing for it to reach such a scale? However, in the extreme distance, a divine temple stood at the peak of a mountain, shining with a golden brilliance. Xiao, Guang Yuan and Yu Kai-yu also leapt out, and then more people appeared. However, none of the red-furred monsters charged up, as if each floor had a strict limit. Ayo! A beast's roar sounded in the distance, as if it could tear the sky apart. Everyone was shocked. Even so far away, they could feel the terrifying deterrence contained in that roar. It was at least a flower blossom tier existence, or even a spiritual infant tier beast. What to do? Below there was an unkillable red-furred monster, and above there were flower blossom tier and even spiritual infant tier beasts. It was truly a dilemma. Ling Han, however, only looked at the golden divine temple on the distant mountain peak. He had a feeling that there might be an answer regarding the secret of this divine temple. Let's go. He nodded towards Guang Yuan and Yu Kai-yu. The three of them set off, walking towards the divine temple in the distance. The others all shrugged. The mountain peak wasn't far, but it definitely wouldn't be near if they walked all the way. And who knew how many terrifying beasts they would encounter? Let's charge back. That's right. Although the red-furred monster can't be killed, its battle prowess isn't ridiculously strong, and it's still stronger than spiritual infant tier beasts. Let's go back. Most people wanted to retreat, and only a few decided to follow Ling Han and the others forward. At least with the three of them scouting ahead, if there was any danger, the three of them would be the first to bear it. However, these people were immediately dumbfounded because Ling Han summoned the golem. The three of them all stood on the golem's back, and the large golem carried them towards the mountain peak. Oh. Chapter 485. Oh. How to play this. The few people who originally wanted to take advantage of Ling Han were instantly disappointed. Ling Han had a flying tool, but they could only rely on their feet to run, and couldn't rely on Ling Han to block the disaster for them at all. They immediately dispelled the idea of following, and were just about to turn back when they saw a flash at the entrance, and three people walked out. These three people were all in their 30s, all male, and emitted an astonishing aura, making everyone involuntarily bend down and lower their heads. Flower Blossom tear greetings, Lord Miao, Lord Gu, Lord Gung. Everyone half knelt and saluted the three. Miao Qi-si, Gu Yuanliang, and Gung Jingshang were all figures on the prodigy roll several generations ago, and now they all stepped into the Flower Blossom tier, becoming the mainstay of various sections. In the future, they might even advance into the spiritual infant tier, and become the most powerful figures in the North region. Miao Qi-si raised his hand, indicating for everyone to stand up. His gaze was the same as Gu Yuanliang and Gung Jingshang, staring at the divine temple on the distant mountain peak. Let's go. Gu Yuanliang tapped his foot, and his figure was already floating in the air. Miao Qi-si and Gung Jingshang also followed. Haha, with three Flower Blossom tier elites appearing, I believe that even if Ling Han finds the treasure, he won't be able to get it. Someone gloated. Humph, just a Flower Blossom tier puppet. It can't be compared to a real Flower Blossom tier. Even if it's a heaven-grade alchemist, no one has to give face to alchemists in a mystery realm exploration. That's right, as an alchemist, one should honestly refine pills. Quite a few people echoed, all jealous of Ling Han. Although the rock spirit was a bit clumsy and foolish, its explosive power was a bit weak at the start, but once it increased its speed, it wouldn't lose to normal flower blossom tier warriors. Only a few minutes later, they arrived at the mountain peak. The massive golem landed, and Ling Han and the other two jumped down one after another. Although there were many creatures on this level, the space wasn't too different. Ling Han already swept a circle in the sky, and didn't find any steps leading to the 4th level. In other words, this level was the last level. His conjecture was correct. It was highly likely that this final temple would reveal the secrets of this place. This golden temple was 1,000 feet tall and completely golden. It was as if the large temple outside had shrunk by 10 times. The difference was that only one side could be entered. Little stone, you take the lead. Ling Han patted the stone spirit. The rock spirit naturally did not object and walked at the very front. Ling Han and the other two followed closely behind. With the flower blossom tier rock spirit blocking in front, Ling Han had enough confidence to put Guang Yuan, Yu Kaiyu, and the rockman into the Black Tower at the most dangerous moment. Unexpectedly, the inside of this temple was very bright, and it was not as empty as those black temples. There were stone pillars here that were only 1 meter tall. The top of the stone pillars was cast in the shape of a basin, and the inside was empty. The entire temple only had 1 floor, so it was extremely spacious. Walking inside made the 3 of them feel insignificant. There were no pillars in the temple, and the 3 walls leaned against each other to support the weight. Rows of stone pillars reached the center of the temple, but there was a hexagon-shaped object that floated in midair and continuously spun, very strange. So fragrant. Ling Han and the other two wrinkled their noses. Eat. The rock spirit also transmitted the thought to Ling Han, but it stared at the stone pillars on the ground. Go eat. Ling Han waved his hand. But don't overstuff yourself. The rock spirit was instantly overjoyed. It pounced in front of a stone pillar, and its head split open as if it had opened a large mouth, biting towards the basin. With a kacha, it bit off half of the stone basin and started chewing, eating happily. Ling Han and the other two trotted to the stone pillar closest to the hexagon-shaped object. They saw that there was a bit of milky white liquid in the stone basin, and it was this liquid that emitted a shocking fragrance. What is this? Yu Kaiyu asked. Ling Han shook his head and said, I don't know either, but I can be sure that this is an absolute spiritual liquid with incomparably huge value. So, you guys can get lost. A cold voice sounded, and Miao Qi and the other two already walked in with large strides, obviously not taking Ling Han's identity as a heaven-grade alchemist seriously. In the outside world, heaven-grade alchemists naturally had a transcendent status, but when fighting over treasures it was all based on strength. It was impossible to give away treasures just because you were the son of the Shattering Void tier. Heaven-grade alchemists were the same. Ling Han said to Guang Yuan and Yu Kaiyu, you guys put away these spiritual liquids first. He turned around, waved at the rock spirit and said, Little rock, come, it's time to fight. The rock spirit was somewhat reluctant. It was eating happily, but who asked Ling Han to be its master? It couldn't help but stare fiercely at Miao Qi and the other two. It was precisely the appearance of these 3 that interrupted its delicious meal, which made it very angry. Puppet, Miao Qi and the other two said in surprise when they saw the mysterious patterns on the rock spirit's body. They obviously thought those patterns were formation patterns. They sensed the strength of this golem, emitting an aura that they didn't dare to underestimate. Master Ling, although you are a genius of alchemy, admired by the whole world, since you entered the historical site to seize and defend, you should have the self-awareness of a martial artist, Gu Yuanliang said. If you force me to make a move, I won't be merciful. Ling Han cracked a smile and said, Is that so? Stop. Seeing Guang Yuan and Yu Kaiyu take out a jade bottle to collect the spiritual liquid in the stone basin, Miao Qi and the other two couldn't hold back anymore. They all moved, wanting to stop them from seizing the spiritual liquid. The rock spirit roared angrily and charged towards them, while Ling Han drew out the demon birth sword and activated the thunder battle armor, slashing towards the 3 large hands of origin power. Pooh! As the sword chi swept out, Ling Han forcibly sliced open the 3 large hands of origin power, not letting them slap Yu Kaiyu and Guang Yuan. However, he was only in the second layer of the spiritual pedestal tier, and even with the protection of the thunder battle armor, he was still shaken badly by the huge force. What? He vomited blood. Just like the 3 lives corpse casket, even a shattering void tier elite couldn't break the casket, but if a heaven tier elite laid inside, he would definitely be shaken into pieces. Blocking a direct attack and neutralizing the impact of the power were two different things. Ling Han, however, was radiant. Under the protection of the thunder battle armor, he could withstand such an impact, and as long as he didn't die in one hit with the recovery power of the indestructible heaven scroll, he could immediately recover. Of course, the most important thing was that he formed the body of iron sheet. Otherwise, if it was someone else, even with the protection of the thunder battle armor, it would be very difficult for them to be heavily injured. After all, the flower blossom tier was too strong. Then let's fight. Ling Han laughed loudly. Chapter 486. Oh. A mere second layer of the spiritual pedestal tier actually dared to say that he wanted to fight with flower blossom tier warriors. How heroic was this? Yes, it was heroic. If it was others, this would be stupid behavior. But one sword strike cut off the attacks of 3 flower blossom tier warriors, showing outstanding strength, so it was naturally heroic. I've long heard that Master Ling's battle prowess is amazing. You once relied on a spirit tool to hit 20 stars of spiritual infant tier battle prowess during the Prodigy Tournament's test. So it's not false, Miao Qixi said indifferently. Gu Yuanliang and Geng Jingshang's expressions were solemn. Even if Ling Han relied on a spiritual infant tier law decree to blast out such terrifying battle prowess, how many spiritual infant tier warriors could have 20 stars of battle prowess? At least in the North region, they'd never heard of such an existence. Sealing power with a law decree, one could launch an attack at any time, anywhere. This was indeed a great deterrent weapon. But the problem was, how could a sealed attack truly rival spiritual infant tier's battle prowess? To seal 20 stars of spiritual infant tier battle prowess, how strong was this spiritual infant tier warrior? Was it possible to have 21 stars of spiritual infant tier battle prowess? And the North region didn't have any deity transformation tier warriors. Very strange. Therefore, when the news spread, most people didn't believe it, thinking that it was exaggerated to flatter Ling Han, a heaven-grade alchemist. However, Ling Han actually destroyed the attacks of 3 great flower blossom tier elites with a single sword strike, which made Miao Qixi and the others reconsider. Ling Han might have really obtained a deity transformation tier law decree, or perhaps brought it from the middle state. A heaven-grade alchemist naturally had this kind of face. It couldn't be underestimated. Master Ling, to avoid hurting harmony, how about we divide these spiritual liquids equally? Miao Qixi suggested. Ling Han smiled and said, I'll listen for now. How do we divide equally? Naturally, it's one for each of us. Gu Yuanliang interrupted. Yu Kaiyu and Guang Yuan weren't willing, but in front of flower blossom tier warriors, they didn't have the qualifications to bargain, and could only dare to be angry but not speak. Ling Han laughed loudly and said, You guys aren't beautiful, but your thoughts are really beautiful. Grandmaster Ling, although you're a heaven-grade alchemist, you're only at the second layer of the spiritual pedestal tier. Seizing treasures in the mystery realm, everyone doesn't gain status, but strength, Miao Qixi said coldly, obviously unwilling to give up on the spiritual liquid. Ling Han laughed loudly and said, Since you guys are so powerful, why are you still spouting so much nonsense? Are you guys wasting my time? That's crazy. Miao Qixi and the other two were furious. A heaven-grade alchemist was indeed high and mighty, but you haven't formed your own force yet, so you should keep a low profile no matter what. Besides, this was a mystic realm. Was it really good for you to be so arrogant? Don't get slaughtered without knowing who did it. Then Master Ling, I've offended you. Geng Jingshang said coldly. Although Ling Han had broken their attack with a single sword strike, it had only been a casual attack from the 3 of them. Moreover, he had also been injured and vomited blood repeatedly. Was there any need to say how big the difference in strength was? Little Stone, beat them up, ordered Ling Han. Boom, the rock spirit didn't say another word and rushed over to give them a violent beating. It was extremely displeased. It was happily eating stones and you guys suddenly interrupted it, so how could it not be angry? It wanted to immediately knock them over and throw them out so it could continue eating stones. Miao Qi attacked towards the rock spirit and said, "You guys seize the spiritual liquid. Leave this puppet to me." "Alright." Gu Yuanliang and Gung Jingsheng both nodded. With 2 flower blossom tier warriors joining hands, what could 3 spiritual pedestal tier warriors do? "Young Master Han, what do we do?" Yu Kai-yu and Guang Yuan both asked. "Nothing." Ling Han smiled. "Brother Yu, quickly ask for a spiritual infant tier law decree." Yu Kai-yu couldn't help but roll his eyes. "Using another spiritual infant tier law decree so soon? Did you think it was something that fell from the sky?" Even if he was the sole male heir of this generation of the Yu clan, he had only been granted 3 law decrees by the old ancestor. Firstly, the materials were too precious, and secondly, refining one required a spiritual infant tier warrior to spend a month to recover, so how could it be mass-produced? However, with flower blossom tier warriors pressing on, if they wanted to keep the treasure, they could only use their trump cards. When fighting for treasure, it was useless no matter how great one's background was. This was the rule of martial art, and it was possible to be secretly killed by others as long as it could be kept a secret. Yu Kai-yu unleashed a spiritual infant tier law decree and shouted, "Don't force me to use my ultimate move." Gu Yuanliang sneered and said, "If a spiritual infant tier warrior came personally, we'd obviously leave, but it's only a law decree." He shook his head. After the law decree was activated, it could only attack once and dodging it would be fine. On the other hand, didn't they have a spiritual infant tier law decree on them? Ling Han reached out to stop him and said, "Don't waste it. It's just 2/3 layer flower blossom tier warriors. No need to use a law decree." Who? What did he mean just 3rd layer flower blossom tier? Flower blossom tier, as long as they crossed this threshold, they'd transcend mortals, and how could mortals rival them? Gu Yuanliang and Gung Jingsheng were obviously extremely displeased, and even Guang Yuan and Yu Kai-yu gritted their teeth, feeling that Ling Han's tone was a bit too arrogant. Ling Han waved his hand and said, "You guys step back for now, let me deal with these 2. Such arrogance." Gu Yuanliang attacked, striking towards Ling Han. This time he was serious, and the large hand of origin power he struck out moved with countless patterns. This was the flower blossom tier's martial art intent, drawing upon the spiritual qi of heaven and earth, increasing the power of this palm strike infinitely. The reason why flower blossom tier warriors were countless times stronger than spiritual pedestal tier warriors, no matter how much of a genius you were, was that flower blossom tier warriors could draw upon the spiritual qi of heaven and earth to increase their battle prowess. How could human strength compare to the power of heaven and earth? Unless one could gather the power of a nation and borrow other power to contend against the power of heaven and earth. Hong Long Long, the large hand attacked with supreme might. Ling Han fully activated the thunder battle armor, and circles of lightning spread out. He never thought of relying on his own power to fight against a flower blossom tier warrior, so he obviously had to rely on the thunder battle armor, and body of iron sheet was his other trump card. Lightning again. Yu Kai-yu rubbed his chin and pondered. Could it be, this is the thunder battle armor, but isn't the thunder battle armor junior brother Han's? Lady Li and brother Guang both follow him. Could it be that junior brother Han and Master Ling know each other, and have a good relationship? His nerves were very thick, and he never thought of the possibility that Ling Han and Han Lin were the same person. Hong! The flower blossom tier's large hand struck down, but was blocked by the lightning barrier. Pa pa pa! In the flash of lightning the large hand exploded into pieces. What? Ling Han vomited blood again. The direct impact could be dissolved by the lightning barrier, but the shockwave produced by the huge force couldn't be helped. After all, the thunder battle armor wasn't truly activated. Gu Yuanliang and Gung Jingsheng were both shocked. It was blocked again. Ling Han smiled, pointed at Miao Qi and said, "Your companion can't hold on much longer." The 2 turned their heads and were shocked again. They saw that Miao Qi was completely suppressed by that puppet, to the point of being at a disadvantage, and was in a precarious situation. Chapter 487. This pool of lightning was at least 30 meters in circumference, and on the other side was a cave. Half of the cave's entrance had collapsed, giving off a feeling of dilapidation. The pool of lightning surged, rolling with terrifying divine lightning, and the scene was astonishing. In the surroundings there were many people watching. Some even wanted to barge in and enter the cave, but after trying for a while, they immediately gave up. They were bombarded by the lightning until their bodies were covered in scorch marks, looking extremely miserable. Ling Han said, "The might of this pool of lightning is probably at the deity transformation tier." Although the current younger generation was rising very fiercely, even geniuses like Small Saber King and Lang Yatian, who could be classified as part of the younger generation, hadn't crossed into the deity transformation tier, not to mention others. However, it didn't matter if their cultivation level wasn't high enough. They could use treasures to make up for it. Ling Han then saw someone take out an umbrella, open it, and enter into the pool of lightning. The lightning bombarded, yet this umbrella emitted a bright luster, turning into a shield that blocked all the lightning. It was a woman, beautiful and moving. Her figure was graceful, and as she stepped on the lightning waves, she was as elegant as a fairy, captivating one's heart. Broad Sun Sex Wenren Qian Qian. What? I've never heard of her. Wenren Fairy is very low-key, but her talent is astonishing, and her strength is extremely powerful. Even she herself is as beautiful as a fairy, not inferior to the Pearl of the Wang clan and the beauty of the Hu clan. Whether she's strong or not is still unknown, but she's really beautiful. If she's beautiful, you can have her. Wenren Fairy has said that as long as it's a battle of the same cultivation level, or a battle of the same age, a man who can defeat her will have the right to be her future husband. Really? Of course it's true. However, she didn't say that if you win, you'll definitely be able to marry her. She just has the right, that's all. Even so, it still made a lot of people eager to give it a try. This Wenren Qian Qian was really so beautiful that it made one's heart tremble. The moment they closed their eyes, all they could see was her graceful figure, the absolutely beautiful and elegant scene of her stepping on the lightning waves. It was something that could not be erased. I advise you all to give up. Wenren Fairy has already been taken by Jia Ming. Unless you all think that you can compete with Jia Ming, otherwise you better stop worrying. Jia Ming. Hearing this name, a lot of people revealed astonished expressions. This was the most talented genius that had obtained the qualification to directly enter the Restore Heaven Academy, and his reputation had only risen in the last 2 years. Previously, he had always been bitterly cultivating in the depths of the savage mountains, fighting demonic beasts, and had never appeared in the world. It was precisely because of this that Jia Ming's murderous nature was also extremely great. He was cruel in his actions, and never knew when to be lenient. In the 2 years that he had returned, who knew how many geniuses had died at his hands, and some were even disciples of great clans and forces, but he had always been safe and sound. There was no other reason than that Jia Ming was a disciple of the Earth Dragon sect. Who would dare to touch a disciple that walked out of one of the 5 great ancient sects? Moreover, Jia Ming had also killed in a one-on-one battle, which could be said to be rather fair. Which force would dare to suppress him? This was the advantage of having a great background. Otherwise, someone like Jia Ming, who slaughtered without fear, would have long since been secretly slaughtered many times by the older generation. No one dared to open their mouths and speak nonsense. Jia Ming was a person who would harm and kill at the slightest disagreement, completely without any scruples. If he knew that they were fantasizing about Wenren Qian Qian behind his back, he would definitely hunt them down and kill them. This demon couldn't be provoked. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "Come, some people have already entered. The heaven cloud purple thunder should be inside the cave. This lightning pool is only a bit of power that has leaked out." Rabbit expressed his agreement. "Let's go. Hu Niu pulled Ling Han's hand and walked towards the lightning pool, completely unconcerned. Ling Han stepped out, but the thunderclap 9th heaven had already been channeled, and his body was emitting the light of lightning. He couldn't possibly resist the lightning of the deity transformation tier. But these lightning bolts weren't the attacks of anyone. He used lightning to counter lightning, and only hoped to safely pass through it, which greatly reduced the difficulty. However, unexpectedly, Hu Niu's body turned into a bottomless pit. When the lightning struck, it was easily absorbed by her, making Ling Han stare with wide eyes. This was lightning of the deity transformation tier. Not to mention Ling Han, even Small Saber King would be trembling with fear if he came. But Hu Niu was good, not rejecting anything that came, and absorbed it cleanly. Seeing this, Rabbit hurriedly jumped over. Behind Hu Niu, A small path appeared in the pool of lightning, as if a supreme almighty being had forcibly cut out a safe zone. However, as Hunyo moved further away, this small path was also quickly submerged by lightning, and once again became a complete pool of lightning. In the surroundings, everyone was in disbelief, but their gazes were fixed on Ling Han. They naturally thought that such an action was done by Ling Han. Who would suspect a little girl that was only 7 or 8 years old, or a large white rabbit? Under Hunyo's lead, Ling Han very quickly passed through the pool of lightning, and arrived at the entrance of the cave. "I'm not full yet." Hunyo still hadn't had enough, and turned around to look at the pool of lightning behind her. Ling Han smiled and said, "Then you can go and absorb some more power of lightning." "Forget it, I'd better help Nyo's Ling Han find the heaven cloud purple thunder first," Hunyo said very sensibly. This little girl was really becoming more and more likable. Nyo is so obedient, Ling Han must marry Nyo in the future. The little girl immediately began to bargain. The two of them walked into the cave, and the rabbit followed behind them without any human rights, because as long as it walked side by side, it would be bitten by Hunyo. She said that it was a hindrance, so Uncle Rabbit could only follow behind obediently. On one side it was feeling displeased, thinking that it was an elite of the spiritual infant tier, so why did it have to follow behind a human brat of the flower blossom tier? The entrance to the cave was not big, and was also in tatters. However, after walking inside for a while, it suddenly became wide and spacious, and the deeper they went, the bigger the space became. That's Ling Han's eyes swept over, and his figure had already leaped over. He saw that there was a ruin in front of him. It had once been a building, but now only a foundation was left, and there were dilapidated walls all around. It was unknown how many years ago this had been. "Palace Hall Qinghe?" Ling Han mumbled. He walked one round in the surroundings, and actually really did find a broken plaque in the ruins, but there was only one word left on it: harmony. It had to be the Palace Hall of Clear Harmony. Ling Han was completely sure that this was the Palace Hall of Clear Harmony that Zishuesian had spoken of. This lightning, this ruin, and this harmony. There could not be such a coincidence in this world. After 10,000 years there had indeed been a great change. Ling Han could not help but feel rueful. If it had not been for the earthquake that had happened previously, and if the thunder spirit had not appeared, would he have been able to discover this place? This mountain peak was very large, and its interior had basically been hollowed out. Thus, the space inside was also very large. This Palace Hall of Clear Harmony was not built at the end of the cave, and there was still a very large space behind it. Ling Han hesitated. Was the thing that Zishuesian had left behind in the Palace Hall of Clear Harmony, or was it in the depths of the cave? That was because the message that Zishuesian had left behind only contained the words, Boundless Mountain, and Palace Hall of Clear Harmony, and did not explain in detail. Ling Han thought for a long while, and decided to first search the ruins of the Palace Hall of Clear Harmony. Oh. Chapter 488. Let's go. The four that survived no longer hesitated. This Bug King wasn't something they could contend against at all. Not to mention that it was sealed in amber. Even a spiritual infant tier's attack couldn't harm it. If it wasn't for this piece of amber as a seal, its speed would probably increase countless times, and that would be a disaster of total annihilation. Even escaping would be impossible. The main purpose of the divine temple was to offer sacrifices. Could it be that the ancient people offered sacrifices to this Bug King? But if this Bug King was high and mighty, how could it be sealed in amber? What the hell was that red-haired monster? Earlier, the Bug King was obviously sucking its blood, but after so many years it still hadn't sucked the blood clean? Thinking of this, Ling Han couldn't help but jump in fright. That red-haired monster still hadn't died? Too strange, this place was too strange. Just like that, their thoughts flew for a while, and they had already escaped from the divine temple. However, the Bug King was still in hot pursuit. It flew out shakily and started sucking at them. Fortunately, its speed was too slow. The four only needed to notice its movement changes and could immediately react, definitely not letting its mouthpart face them. After rushing out of the divine temple, Gung Jingsheng immediately flew away. At this moment, he forgot to ask for the spiritual liquid from Ling Han and the others. His life was more important. Ling Han and the others also jumped onto the rock spirit's body and flew away. The rock spirit looked back as it flew. It was still thinking about those stone pillars in the temple. For it, they were great nourishment. The Bug King was still chasing, but its speed was really too slow. It was thrown further and further away, until finally it was only a small dot. Xiao Xiao, Gung Jingshang and the rock spirit already flew to the entrance of the third floor. At this time there were still many people waiting there. Seeing them return, they all revealed curious expressions, obviously wanting to know what was discovered in the divine temple at the summit. However, the quick-witted people immediately discovered that 3 flower blossom tier warriors went together, but now only Gung Yuanshang returned. What did this mean? Lord Gung. Someone was insensible and approached to talk. Gung Yuansheng immediately slapped over, sending that person flying. He then entered the passageway and returned to the second floor. Ling Han laughed and said, "If you don't want to die, then hurry up and run. Don't ask anything, I don't have time to explain to you." Saying that, Yu Kaiyu and Guang Yuan also entered the second floor. There were still 7 red-furred monsters guarding the staircase on the second floor. However, as Gung Yuanxing was the first to appear, the 7 red-furred monsters chased after him. When they discovered Ling Han's group, 4 of the red-furred monsters continued to chase after Gung Yuanxing while 3 of them ran back and roared at Ling Han's group. "What are you roaring for?" Ling Han flew out, his sword light sweeping out. Poof poof poof. 3 of the red-furred beasts were instantly sliced into pieces. Go. He didn't even bother to stop and continued charging forward. The Worm King behind them was too ferocious. If they were caught, they would definitely be in trouble. Behind him, the others also ran out. Although these people didn't know why they had to run, even a Flower Blossom tier elite fled in panic, so it was obvious that this place was extremely dangerous. Suddenly, a dark cloud rolled over, and everyone was instantly shocked. It was a swarm of blood-sucking bugs. Just as everyone prepared to fight, a strange scene appeared. This swarm of bugs actually ignored them and flew towards the second-floor staircase, flying into the third-floor space one after another. Everyone instantly breathed a sigh of relief, but Ling Han's expression changed greatly as he suddenly shouted, "Quickly, get on small rock and advance at full speed." This swarm of bugs entering the third floor was very likely under the command of that Super Bug King, and although that big guy moved slowly, what if it was carried by the entire swarm of bugs? Yu Kaiyu and Guangyuan also thought of this possibility and instantly paled in fright, hurriedly jumping onto the rock spirit. The big guy didn't fly, but directly accumulated power in its legs, and with a xiao it leaped forward over 300 meters. Flying wasn't the fastest, but it had an advantage when leaping over terrain. In a flat area for a power type like the rock spirit, the explosive speed of its legs was obviously faster. The others didn't understand why Ling Han and the other 2 were so scared that they actually rode on a Flower Blossom tier puppet to escape. Some people were smart, thinking that even 2 Flower Blossom tier elites were lost inside, so the third floor might contain some terrifying monster. They didn't hesitate anymore, hurriedly taking out spirit talismans and sticking them on their bodies. Instantly their figures sped up, flying towards the entrance of the first floor. However, some people couldn't bear to waste it, still advancing at the original speed. The swarm of bugs returned from the third floor, and countless bugs surrounded a piece of amber, carrying it and chasing everyone at high speed. The few people that fell behind were quickly surrounded by the swarm of bugs. The Super Bug King attacked, instantly sucking those people dry. The entire swarm of bugs didn't stop, continuing to chase the people in front. Wong 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 from the black temples along the way, swarms of insects flew out, joining the army of the ultimate insect king, making this army seem even more astonishing, and also scaring those people at the back to the point their souls almost flew out of their bodies, running for their lives. The rock spirit ran very quickly, and soon ran neck to neck with Gung Yuanshang, making this Flower Blossom tier elite's eyes shine fiercely, wanting to make a move and make Ling Han and the other 2 stay. When being chased, you didn't need to run the fastest, as long as someone was slower than you. If he made Ling Han and the other 2 stay, it could obviously buy him some more time. However, thinking of the rock spirit's terror, he still dispelled the idea of making a move, putting all his origin power on the journey. The entrance of the first floor was already in sight. Xiao Xiao they entered one after another, then ran out in different directions. Not good, where's Lady Lu? Yukayu suddenly thought, didn't Li Si-chan stay on the first floor earlier? It's fine, she left long ago, Ling Han said casually. Yukayu was skeptical, but since Ling Han said so, he could only believe. Not long after, the others also escaped from the entrance, and only a few seconds later, swarms of blood-sucking bugs flew out, practically blotting out the sky and covering the earth. And in the end, there were over 100 fist-sized bug kings surrounding the amber, supporting that super bug king. Hong, the swarm of bugs scattered, flying out in 3 different directions. Under the lead of the rock spirit, Ling Han and the other 2 ran out of the divine temple in about a minute or so, appearing at the bottom of the lake. This time they didn't have time to slowly climb the rocks, so the rock spirit rose into the air and brought them to the shore. At this time some people rushed over, looking at the grand divine temple in the middle of the lake with a shocked expression. Run, there's a big guy down there, if you don't run you'll die, Ling Han yelled. It's Grandmaster Ling. Someone recognized Ling Han. Seeing Ling Han run so hurriedly, some people chose to believe him but some didn't. Not only did they not plan to leave, but they also wanted to go down and investigate. In a short while countless blood-sucking bugs flew out, and when those bug kings also appeared, it was an unavoidable massacre. Chapter 489. Divine Temple, 3rd floor, inside the golden temple that was 10 times smaller. 18 chains locked a red-haired monster, and it didn't move for a long time, as if it was a dead person. But after an unknown amount of time, a red light surged on its body. That was a drop of blood. Originally, the blood-sucking bug king stabbed its mouth into its heart, and as long as a drop of blood was produced, it would be sucked away. But now the bug king was gone, and this drop of blood was preserved. A miraculous scene appeared. As the blood flowed, the red-haired monster actually glowed with an astonishing vitality, and the hair on its body also continuously faded away, revealing deathly pale skin that tightly stuck to the bones. This was actually a female, but now she was like a dried corpse without even a strand of hair. Her appearance could only be described as terrifying and frightening. But after a long while, the second drop of blood was produced, and once again flowed through her body. Her vitality was even more abundant, and her skin quickly became moist and smooth. Her buttocks were all raised high, and a head of long red hair grew out, reaching her buttocks, and also covering her private parts, leaving behind a haze. This was a great beauty with red lips like fire, and eyebrows like a painting full of seductive allure. A pair of black wings spread out on her back, forming bat wings. There was not a single feather, and each piece was at least 3 meters long. She stretched, appearing somewhat lazy, but it made the 2 proud parts of her body stand out even more. Ding ding dang dang dang, the iron chains made crisp sounds. She clapped her hands and said, "Trapping this lady for 100,000 years, so boring. Without the suppression of the blood-sucking bugs, this demon suppression chain can't trap this lady for long." She released her divine senses to sense, and suddenly laughed loudly, saying to herself, "The wind wing race suppressed this lady, but they were afraid that killing this lady would provoke the powerhouses of my race to wipe them out. They only sealed this lady, and then used the blood-sucking bug king to absorb this lady's essence blood, not letting this lady have a chance to escape. I heard that the wind wing race and the blood-sucking bug king made a contract for the wind wing race to forever worship the blood-sucking bug king in exchange for the blood-sucking bug king suppressing this lady. I didn't think that the wind wing race had already cut off their worship tens of thousands of years ago. No wonder that bug king was furious. Strange, why do I feel that this isn't the ancient land of the wind wings race? It seems like I have been pushed into some strange space. No matter what, the most important thing right now is to escape and then find that human youth. I feel like he has some amazing treasure on him." Ling Han and the other 2 continued to run madly, and only after they had traveled another few hundred miles did they heave a sigh of relief. Although the swarm was large in number, it wasn't that shocking when placed in such a large world. Moreover, the strongest one was only that super bug king. As long as that guy didn't catch up, there was nothing to be afraid of. The 3 of them stopped to regulate their breathing. The spiritual energy here was too abundant. They had to cultivate for a long time every day. Otherwise, it would be a huge waste. On the other hand, the rock spirit asked Ling Han for a few stone pillars and began to eat them. A few hours later, The three of them had finished their cultivation, and their realms had improved a little. The harvest this time is really great. Wuxia took out a jade bottle that contained spiritual liquid, but they didn't know what it was. They only knew that it was definitely something good, but as for how to use it, they could only stare. Although spiritual liquid was good, it couldn't be eaten indiscriminately. Very soon, he finished the whole pot of fish soup, and only then did he begin to circulate 5 elements heaven-grade skill to refine the medicinal essence. His whole body shot out divine light, and an intense change occurred inside his body. The indestructible heaven scroll circulated, raising his physique from the iron sheet tier to the Vajra tier, but this step required too much precious medicine essence, and definitely couldn't be accomplished in a short period of time. What was awkward was that the indestructible heaven scroll extracted most of the precious medicine essence, leaving him pitifully little to raise his cultivation. He wanted to raise his cultivation first, but 5 elements heaven grade skill couldn't compete with the indestructible heaven scroll, leaving him helpless. Forget it, a strong physique was obviously a good thing, and even if he reached the Vajra tier, he only completed the first layer of the indestructible heaven scroll. As for how many layers this cultivation technique had, Ling Han still didn't know, because he didn't understand the following cultivation techniques at all. It was probably because his tier was too low. Ling Han entered the tent, pretending to rest for a while, but actually entered into the Black Tower. He wanted to study the spiritual liquid. Chapter 490. At that time, the spiritual liquid was only the shallow bottom of the stone basin, pitifully little. After being put into the jade bottle, there was only half a bottle, and it was also put into 2 bottles by Wuxia and Guang Yuan, so it was even less. Because he didn't know what this spiritual liquid was, Ling Han brought it into the Black Tower, preparing to try it himself. In the Black Tower he was like a god, and even if he ate poison he could get rid of it. It should be like this, right? He asked Small Tower, if I eat poison here I probably won't die, right? Small Tower trembled slightly and said, if you seek death yourself, no one can save you. These words. Ling Han took out the jade bottle, shook it in front of Small Tower and said, do you know what this is? Only a sliver of heaven and earth energy, still considered pure, Small Tower said calmly, but Ling Han could feel a sliver of disdain. True, it was a master that instantly swallowed a chaos source rock, so it was hard not to be proud. Ling Han paused and asked, can I take it directly? Small Tower thought and said, no, you're too weak. If you take it directly, your body will definitely explode, and even the power of the Black Tower won't be able to suppress it in time. It's that powerful? Ling Han said in surprise. You can try, Small Tower encouraged. Ling Han rolled his eyes and said, I'm your master. Is it really good for you to encourage me like this? A master that can die from nourishing medicine is too stupid. Just right to change one, Small Tower said indifferently. I've really disappointed you. Not only will I not die, but I will also live for a very, very long time. Just accept your fate. Ling Han said with a smile. He shook the jade bottle and said, then dilute it with water before taking it is feasible? Yes, Small Tower said succinctly. How many times do you want to dilute? Ling Han asked again. About 10,000 times, Small Tower said. Ling Han instantly coughed. It actually needed 10,000 times. He originally felt that this spiritual liquid was pitifully little, but if diluted 10,000 times was what he could bear, then this spiritual liquid could practically be regarded as a small lake. Not only could it be drunk, but it could also be used for bathing. I've profited. Ling Han laughed heartily. As expected of the immortal realm's spiritual elixir, its effects were truly shocking. He was about to pour a drop of spiritual liquid into a pool, but after some thought, he asked Small Tower, inside the Black Tower it shouldn't spoil, right? No. Small Tower shook its head. Ling Han continued to tip the bottle. He poured a drop into the pond and drank it in one gulp. Immediately, his mouth was filled with the fragrance, and he felt as if he was about to ascend to heaven and become an immortal. There was too much energy. Unfortunately, the indestructible heaven scroll did not circulate on its own to fight for this energy with the 5 elements heaven grade skill. This meant that the indestructible heaven scroll did not have this kind of energy, so it was impossible for it to improve Ling Han's physique. This made Ling Han both happy and disappointed. Obviously, although the energy was abundant, it could not be compared to the king-level demonic beasts in terms of quality. This meant that the spiritual liquid could only be used to accumulate one's cultivation level. Ling Han, on the other hand, didn't care. At least before the Shattering Void tier, all cultivation barriers did not exist. He only needed the rapid accumulation of cultivation level, and this effect was enough. After spending more than an hour, Ling Han finally refined the spiritual liquid. He took out a few jade bottles and poured the diluted spiritual liquid into them, then exited the Black Tower and called Yu Kai Yu and the others over, handing over a bottle to each of them. The original spiritual liquid's energy is too violent, and whoever drinks it will die. This is the diluted one, so you guys have to take it easy. Brother Yu and Brother Guang can take a small sip each time, and Si-chan can take 10 drops at most. Adjust according to your own situation. Yu Kai Yu and the others all nodded and took the jade bottles one after another, already unable to contain their joy and starting to take it. Ling Han also entered the Black Tower and poured himself a large mouthful, continuing to refine. However, this was the same as medicinal pills, having considerable resistance. When Ling Han took the third mouthful, he felt that he couldn't completely refine the medicinal power, and the efficiency instantly dropped by half. He exited the Black Tower and lay down to rest. Even spiritual pedestal tier warriors needed a certain amount of sleep, and couldn't be completely replaced by cultivation. This was mainly used to recover soul power. After daybreak, the four continued forward. There were blood-sucking bugs chasing them, but how could normal level be taken seriously by Ling Han and the others? They immediately exterminated them lest these bugs brought the news back and attracted the big one. After half a day, a huge city wall appeared ahead, towering into the clouds. In the city there was a pillar of light that soared into the sky, and it was this pillar of light that attracted them to this place. Can it fly over? The four were curious. Ling Han let the rock spirit fly up to try, but the result was that the rock spirit only flew up to a height of 300 meters before falling back down. It transmitted its divine sense to Ling Han that there was a terrifying pressure above, so it could only fly up to a height of 300 meters. To jump over the city wall, what kind of cultivation was needed? The four could only walk along the city wall, believing that since there was a city wall, then there would naturally be a city gate. Sure enough, only a few hours later, a huge city gate appeared ahead. It was 100 meters high, and anyone standing in front of it would suddenly feel incomparably small. There were many people at the city gate, some entering the city, but more people were sitting cross-legged on the side. At first, Ling Han didn't pay much attention, but he soon discovered that the people entering the city were walking very, very slowly. Some even looked like they were in pain and some even spat out blood. They retreated as if they had suffered a serious injury. Only those who have the ability to enter the city gate are qualified to accept the assessment to become a disciple of the 12 palaces. On the side of the city gate were 3 rows of flamboyant characters. Ling Han was surprised and said, "So even without the opening key, one can still obtain the inheritance of the 12 palaces?" Indeed. Our sect's third-generation ancestor was extremely talented and passed the assessment, becoming an outer disciple of the 12 palaces and receiving some divine arts, making our sect the strongest force in the North region, Yu Kai Yu said leisurely, full of yearning. He paused, then said, "Actually, the third-generation ancestor had the chance to become a Shattering Void tier elite, but the environment at that time didn't allow it. The 12 palaces had strict rules that the inheritance of the palace couldn't be passed on to outsiders. So the third-generation ancestor only left his personal martial art experience, which allowed our sect to survive for thousands of years. If we could obtain the true inheritance of the 12 palaces, our sect definitely wouldn't be weaker than the Middle States' rich and powerful families." Ling Han nodded. Becoming an outer disciple and obtaining the true inheritance were definitely different, or else Yen Tianzhao wouldn't want to obtain an item from the palace so much. Even gods would be moved, so what kind of treasure was that? However, obtaining the opening key also had to pass the test. Only by passing through this city gate would one have the chance to go to the 12 palaces, and not just anyone with good luck could obtain the inheritance of the 12 palaces. One also had to have considerable talent. Young Master Han. At this moment, the voices of Lu Yutong and the others were heard. and Ken Yi Zhu Wujiu and Zhu Xianer all walked over. Big Baddie Hunyo pounced on him and hugged one of his legs, like a sticky candy that couldn't be shaken off no matter what. Phone reading was more refreshing. Chapter 491. Ling Han was also furious, the veins on his forehead throbbing, burning with a killing intent that seemed to burn the heavens. Too hateful, actually using the living beings of an entire realm as medicinal ingredients to refine. What kind of madness was this? Could it be that the 5 great immortal sects were all demonic beasts that had taken human form? But even if they were demonic beasts that had taken human form, humans weren't the only ones in the vast lands. On this land there were his friends and relatives, but it was possible that they would suddenly encounter a great disaster in the near future. This caused his killing intent to soar to the skies. If the heavens are unfair, then I'll destroy the heavens. Such a thought arose in Ling Han's mind. His entire body shook, and he entered into a strange state. Sword intent surged all over his body, as if his entire person had become a sword, displaying its sharpness. Fuck, this brat is too excited, and is about to comprehend Tao. Rabbit exclaimed, also filled with envy. Everyone said that it was easy to comprehend Tao under extreme emotions, but that was only for geniuses. Otherwise, if one's aptitude wasn't enough, no matter how excited one was, it would all be a waste. Xiao xiao xiao, Ling Han's fingers unconsciously moved, and flashes of sword chi danced. This was a secret chamber, and it wasn't very big. As the sword chi danced, it instantly filled the entire stone chamber. Ioyo, you want to shoot your Uncle Rabbit to death? Rabbit hurriedly fled, but there was sword chi everywhere, so it could only circulate its origin power to form a shield and take it head-on. However, Ling Han's battle prowess was too terrifying. Even if these sword chi were merely flicked out by his fingers, their destructive power was astonishing, causing it to cry out in pain. Fortunately, it was also a freak, and the layer of skin on its body was so thick that even Hunyo couldn't bite through it. It was fine for it to take a few of Ling Han's sword chi head-on, but the pain was naturally unavoidable. Yet Hunyo giggled and walked freely beneath the sword chi. Her figure twisted and turned, and she could even change her form inconceivably and suddenly dodge, appearing incredibly strange. Rabbit couldn't help but widen its eyes, and murmur, "Body of lightning that's mastered?" Truly astonishing, being able to turn into lightning and change its body at will. It can even be like lightning flashing, compressing space to form short-distance teleportation. If this little girl really has an ancestor in the immortal realm, then what level of existence is that, the king of gods? Ling Han entered into a state of unconsciousness, and under his fury, it actually allowed him to achieve a breakthrough. The doors of 30 flashes of sword chi were slowly opening towards him. He had been stuck at the level of 29 flashes of sword chi for a very long time. This was a true threshold, and since ancient times, it had been thought to be the limit of the number of flashes of chi. Naturally, it was incomparably difficult to surpass. Even if he was a prodigy, he was still stuck. But after so many days, he already had a hazy comprehension. It was as if there was only a thin layer of window paper separating him, yet he was always that little bit off. Only now, under his fury, did he finally break through that thin layer of window paper. Wang, Ling Han's whole body was exuding sword chi, and it was no longer just his fingers. 30 flashes of sword chi was really the limit. This was a metamorphosis. Success! Rabbit exclaimed in surprise. This brat was also a freak. Comprehending chi was actually as easy as drinking water. Though the comprehension of chi was nothing much, and was only a small peak on the path of martial arts, and there were still many higher peaks that needed to be climbed, it was already enough to produce a freak like Ling Han. Ling Han suddenly opened his eyes, revealing a faint look of joy. He had never thought that he would actually be able to reach 30 flashes of sword chi in such a state. Now he could condense ray, and no longer needed to use pseudo-ray to battle, so his battle prowess would naturally increase once again. However, joy could not erase his fury. The 5 great sects were really deranged. They were obviously rearing the whole world as if they were livestock, but for 10,000 years, they actually acted as if they were their savior, and made the people of the world worship them. No wonder Zishuesian would say that they had been living in a giant lie all along. After the destruction of the world, There must have been someone who had left behind the truth of the past. However, the 5 great sects had 10,000 years' time to brainwash and destroy the evidence of their crimes. Thus they were still sitting high up on the altar. No wonder the 5 great sects had been so careful with the ancient map. They were afraid that there might be some clues left behind on the ancient map that would lead to the discovery of the secret from 10,000 years ago, or even the secret from 20,000 years, 50,000 years, or even 100,000 years ago. Ling Han's emotions stabilized. Agitation could not solve the problem. On the contrary, letting his emotions affect his decisions would only cause trouble. For example, if he were to shout loudly now, and reveal the true colors of the 5 great sects, how many people would believe him? Weren't you pouring dirty water on the 5 great ancient sects? Were you slandering the great heroes of 10,000 years ago? Your intentions were deserving of death. No wonder Small Saber King was so indifferent to life, because in his eyes, they would only be dregs of medicine in the future, so what did it matter if a few died? I swear, not only will I flatten the 5 great sects here, I will also charge into the realm of immortals in the future, and those so-called 5 great immortal sects will not be able to escape the fate of destruction, Ling Han said, clenching his fists. Brat, Uncle Rabbit will support you in spirit, Rabbit said undependably. Ling Han Nyo supports you. Defeat everyone. You will be the emperor, and Nyo will be the empress. Hu Nyo meanwhile was very loyal, and completely did not know what bashfulness was. Ling Han laughed loudly, but when Hu Nyo mentioned the emperor and empress, a thought flashed through his mind. Zi Shuexian not only left behind the truth, but also mentioned how to solve this kind of predicament. Simple: split open the skies. Bring the whole lower realm with him and ascend to the realm of immortals, causing the lower realm to become a part of the realm of immortals. Then, the realm of immortals had its own rules, and the 5 great immortal sects definitely could not lay a vicious hand on the people of the divine land. Otherwise, they would really suffer the wrath of the entire realm of immortals. Even if the 5 great immortal sects were very awesome, they would definitely not be able to withstand it. Splitting open the skies, how easy could it be? Feng Peyun said that there would be an extremely great danger if one were to shatter the void and become an immortal now. That was because the 5 great immortal sects had sealed off the passageway to becoming an immortal in this realm, and had laid down a killing formation that could kill any shattering void tier cultivator. In this realm, shattering void tier cultivators were the strongest. Even immortals would be restricted by the Tao of heaven and earth when they descended, but once they left this place, the shattering void tier cultivators would still be shattering void tier cultivators, but the immortals would recover their bodies as immortals. It was as easy for a deity to kill a shattering void tier cultivator. Thus, aside from the people of the 5 great sects who could break open the void and enter into the realm of immortals, anyone else who did so would be seeking their own death. However, now was also the best time, because the development pattern of the lower realm had been changed by the 5 great immortal sects. It was as if the accumulation of 10,000 years was completely unleashed in these short few hundred years. This would allow the realm pill that they concocted to have the greatest effect, and for the martial artists here, it was also an opportunity for extremely rapid growth. Otherwise, where would so many geniuses come from? Ling Han could not help but think of his 4 disciples. If they all became immortals, wouldn't that be selling their own dignity? Ling Han's expression was dark. In future, if he could still see Zhang Yufeng and the others, he would definitely ask them properly. Otherwise, he would definitely carry out the sex rules and purge those with no morals. The problem now returned to splitting open the skies. Splitting open the skies had to be done in the form of a nation, because an individual's battle prowess was limited. However, to bring the whole land into the realm of immortals, the power required would surpass even several hundred or several thousand shattering void tier elites. Thus, only by borrowing the power of the nation could one break through the 9 heavens and enter into the realm of immortals, turning the lower realm into a part of the realm of immortals, and everyone would have the hope of becoming immortals. Ma Duobao. Ling Han suddenly thought of something. Ma Duobao had mentioned splitting open the skies to him a few times, and directly pointed out that the realm of immortals was their greatest enemy. Could it be that he had long since known the truth? Otherwise, why would he establish the Purple Moon Empire? Chapter 492. Not long after they stopped, there was a building that looked like a normal house, but a large group of people gathered at the door. Ling Han saw Yu Kuan-luan, Yang Junhao, and Rong Huan-xian. The heir of the Thousand Corpse sect was still lying in the Three Lives corpse casket, but aside from the main casket, he brought 2 secondary caskets this time. He probably dug up graves and collected other corpse soldiers. Feng Yan was also there, and his hate-filled gaze immediately glared over, causing Ao Feng on the side to be slightly startled. He still didn't know about the feud between Feng Yan and Ling Han. 3 of the 7 sons of Ao family came in, and they were all in the spiritual pedestal tier, obviously more talented. Caillou greets Elder Ao. Yu Caillou saluted to Ao Feng. What he thought was one thing, but what he showed was another. Ao Feng raised his hand slightly, and both sides walked over. "What's everyone waiting here for?" Ling Han asked the white-robed Sword King. Among these people, he had the best impression of Shenzhong Chang. "We waited for the city gate, and when we came here, a formation spirit appeared and said there's a test here. If you can get into the top 3, there'll be an amazing reward," Shenzhong Chang answered. Formation spirit? Ling Han was surprised. "That's right, this entire mystery realm is controlled by the formation spirit," Zhu Xian'er interrupted. This was obviously what her master told her. Ling Han nodded. Although these people entered the 12 heaven mystery realms for the first time, their elders had entered before, and would naturally tell them some taboos. "Oh, what reward?" He was a bit curious. "Didn't say." Shenzhong Chang shook his head. Ling Han's lips twitched and he said, "Didn't say you're all waiting here? It's definitely worth it." Yu Caillou also spoke. "My sect's 3rd-generation ancestor obtained an opportunity here. And from then on, his martial art advanced rapidly. No wonder these geniuses all stopped here, and weren't in a hurry to go elsewhere. On the other hand, without the opening key, these people couldn't enter the 12 palaces, so they might as well set their sights on these practical rewards." "Formation spirit me," Ling Han said. Maybe he could communicate with it and discuss formations together. "It only said one sentence and disappeared," Shenzhong Chang said. "How much longer do we have to wait?" 10 days after the secret realm opened. Ling Han calculated. There were still a few days left. If he had known earlier, he would have taken a stroll outside. Who knows, he might have found some precious elixirs. Only he didn't know if that super bug king would attack over. That big fellow was definitely terrifying. If it really caught up, it would be hard for the people here to escape. Unless the array spirit took action. Although Ling Han did not know what grade the array here was since it was extracted from the God world, it should at least be at the God grade. Everyone waited patiently. This place was filled with spiritual energy, and was a holy land for cultivation. 1 day in here was equivalent to 100 days in the outside world. Thus, even though they were just sitting here, it was not a waste of time. Their cultivations were all rising at a rapid rate. Ling Han was even more exaggerated. Every day he ate great beast meat with absolute cold ice heartfish and added all kinds of 1,000-year-old medicinal ingredients. When it was cooked, all kinds of multicolored light soared into the sky, making those flower blossom tier elites involuntarily swallow their saliva. When the few of them ate to their heart's content, the throats of everyone nearby trembled as they continuously swallowed their saliva. That was called gluttonous. Unfortunately, who dared to rob a heaven-grade alchemist by force? In the North region, some people indeed didn't have to give face to heaven-grade alchemists, but not giving face didn't mean that they could offend them to death. After all, everyone fought over treasures, and no one could say anything. However, if you went to rob a heaven-grade alchemist's meal, the whole world would probably laugh at you to death. Some people were thick-skinned. Qi Hualan and Lin Xiangqin came uninvited and joined their team. Relying on the advantage of being beauties, they also picked up bowls and chopsticks to serve soup and pick up meat, making Hunyo cry out anxiously. How could they rob her food? Fortunately, aside from Ling Han, no one ate much, so the little girl was only anxious for a while. Very soon she excitedly fought over food with Ling Han. "Ling Han, you really came." Rong Huanxian slid the 3 Lives corpse casket closer. Don't tell me you also want to eat meat?" Ling Han pretended to be surprised. "Aren't you a dead man? Dead people also eat meat. Don't be so talkative," Rong Huanxian shouted. He didn't expose Ling Han's secret of possessing a spatial spirit tool that could accommodate living things. as well as obtaining the key to the Sagittarius Palace. It wasn't that his relationship with Ling Han was good, but that he wanted it for himself. Then what do you want? Ling Han said with a smile. I just want to hear your last words. After all, you'll soon be made into a skinned corpse soldier by me. Rong Huanxian cackled. And these people beside you, none of them can escape. In the whole North region, there were probably quite a few people who wanted Ling Han dead, but Rong Huanxian was probably the only one who dared to openly threaten to kill a heaven-grade alchemist. Ling Han sighed and said, So you're here to tell a joke. And everyone give me a round of applause. Lu Yutong and the others all applauded, and also laughed. Ling Han, you'll soon know that this isn't a joke. Rong Huanxian didn't get angry, and instead said in a calm tone, Then I'll wait and see. Ling Han smiled. Humph. Rong Huanxian slid the corpse coffin, wanting to go back. But Ling Han drew out the demon birth sword and slashed at the 3 lives corpse coffin. With a chong, sparks flew. What are you doing? Rong Huanxian said angrily. Got nothing better to do, so I'm slashing at the tortoise shell. Ling Han said with a smile as he continued to strike. Rong Huanxian was furious. With the 3 lives corpse coffin's protection, he obviously didn't fear Ling Han's slashes, but being slashed by Ling Han like this, he lost face. Moreover, every strike would still have a shockwave that spread into the coffin. Although it couldn't harm him, the constant tremors made him feel very uncomfortable. Have you had enough? Seeing that Ling Han still didn't plan to stop after slashing over 100 times, he couldn't help but reprimand. Of course not. You came to threaten me so carelessly and wanted to leave just like that. How could there be such a good thing? Ling Han said darkly. Rong Huanxian was speechless. Who told him to have such a cheap mouth and insist on angering Ling Han? He hurriedly moved the 3 lives corpse coffin and fled towards the city gate. There were still 2 days before the test started anyway, so he wanted to hide first. After all, there were too many people here, and there was also the formation spirit. He didn't want to reveal his trump card too early. Ling Han didn't chase. With the 3 lives corpse coffin, it wouldn't be easy to kill Rong Huanxian. 2 days passed quickly. Wang, a figure appeared out of thin air. It was a child that looked to be only 5 or 6 years old. His entire body was transparent, as if he was an illusion. Formation spirit, the test begins. After you enter that door, you can choose 3 different opponents and choose the one with the best result. Finally, you'll be ranked according to your star power value for surpassing your own cultivation level. That's a spiritual space, and only your divine sense enters. Thus, you won't be able to use any supplementary techniques, but you won't be injured either. The higher the star power value you surpass, the better the reward you'll receive. If you're all trash and only surpass 2 or 3 stars, then you'll at most get something like an earth-grade cultivation technique. Only the top 3 will receive a reward. Chapter 493. The formation spirit disappeared again after speaking. Everyone looked at each other and walked towards the house. It was a pitch-black door that couldn't be seen inside. Let's go. Ling Han and the others also walked over. This house was like a bottomless pit, allowing people to enter one by one without crowding. Xiao, the instant Ling Han walked in, he discovered that he appeared in a circular stone room that was sealed off from all sides. The place was very large, with a diameter of 300 meters and a height of 300 meters. Thinking of what the formation spirit said, Ling Han hurriedly sensed and found that he indeed lost connection with the Black Tower. His divine sense had been pulled out. He was very shocked. One had to know that losing divine sense was equivalent to being an empty shell, and if his divine sense was trapped here, then his body would starve to death. Even if Flower Blossom tier warriors broke away from the mortal world and only needed to absorb spiritual chi to survive, they would still slowly die of old age. If the formation spirit wanted to erase them, it would be a matter of a single thought. Since it could extract their divine sense, then it naturally could easily erase them. As expected of a god-level formation, he didn't even know how the divine sense was extracted. Wang, that child, appeared and said, "Choose your opponent. What tier, battle prowess, and star value do you want?" Ling Han thought and said, "Let's start with 20 stars of the spiritual pedestal tier." "You're at the second layer of the spiritual pedestal tier. surpassing 18 stars. The formation spirit actually revealed a very human-like expression of surprise. Not bad if you can really pass such a test. It's pretty good strength even in Lord Brahma. Ling Han was even more surprised. Surpassing 18 stars was pretty good. Lord Brahma, was this a place in the god realm? What weapon do you use? The formation spirit asked again. Sword, Ling Han said. Xiao, a long sword appeared out of thin air and stabbed into the ground beside Ling Han's feet. Ling Han wanted to discuss Lord Brahma with the formation spirit again. But before he could ask, the formation spirit already disappeared and was replaced by a swordsman of medium build but expressionless. So strong. Ling Han's heart trembled for no reason. This was a true swordsman. His whole body was emitting an astonishing sword intent. Just a glance at him made him feel like his soul was about to be torn apart. His fighting spirit soared as he drew his sword and said, "Then let's fight." That swordsman bent his knees slightly, then suddenly shot out with a speed that was ridiculously fast. Shua, the long sword, was unsheathed, bringing with it an astonishing sword light that was piercingly cold. Ling Han was fearless. He raised his sword to meet the attack. Ding ding ding, the two of them fought fiercely. This was clearly just a divine sense space, but it was incomparably real. The sparks that came out from the collision did not seem fake. The swordsman swung his sword, and immediately 10 streaks of sword chi swept towards Ling Han. Not bad, 10 rays of sword chi. I finally met my match. Ling Han laughed heartily and also slashed out with his sword, sending out 10 rays of sword chi. Ding 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 ding. The sword chi collided and were annihilated. Ling Han was astonished. The quality of his opponent's sword chi was actually not the slightest bit weaker than his. This was very rare. His heroic spirit grew, and he said, "Then take another one of my swords." He began to circulate the mysterious 3000. But before the sword aura had even formed, he was forced to stop. The swordsman was astonishingly sensitive to battle and immediately slashed out with his sword, stopping Ling Han's accumulation of power. Interesting, interesting. Ling Han laughed. You're the first opponent in the same realm to make me stop my sword. That swordsman only had battle instincts, and he still continuously attacked with his sword, his attacks like a tide. Ling Han activated the Eye of Truth and the 100 Illusions transformation movement technique. Under the opponent's sword aura, he was still accumulating power, and wanted to use the mysterious 3000 to directly end the battle. The swordsman's attacks became more and more urgent. Suddenly, the long sword paused slightly, and when the sword slashed down, the shadow of 10 large mountains descended towards Ling Han. Ka 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 ka. Ling Han's body immediately emitted crisp sounds as if his bones were about to break, but Ling Han didn't care at all. He cultivated the body of iron sheet, and his body was equivalent to precious metal of the same level. To crush his body, one had to be at least in the flower blossom tier. In this spiritual space, the formation spirit also faithfully replicated his body's strength. Aside from the Black Tower Demon Birth Sword, and other weapons that weren't brought in, everything else was practically no different from his real body. Ling Han laughed heartily and struck out with his sword. Xiao 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 xiao. Instantly 1,000 sword lights appeared, slashing wildly at the swordsman. These sword lights were too dense. Unless the swordsman also had the Eye of Truth and understanding of the mysterious 3000 wasn't weaker than Ling Han's, then he could possibly kill his way out of these sword lights, just like what Ling Han had done before, killing his way out of Yao Huiyu's sword aura. However, the swordsman obviously didn't possess these 2 points, so he was hit. Pu piu piu. He was also very valiant. As the long sword unfolded, he actually slashed off over 500 flashes of sword chi, but the following sword lights drowned him. When all the sword lights disappeared, the swordsman also vanished into thin air. This was a spiritual space in the first place, and the swordsman wasn't a physical body at all. Very good, you passed. The formation spirit appeared again. You still have 2 chances to choose an opponent. Ling Han asked, "Can I rank first with this result?" "Limited by the rules, I can't answer you." The formation spirit shook its head, and said methodically, "Can you talk about the great Brahma?" Ling Han changed the question. Actually, this was what he wanted to ask. "Limited by the rules, I can't answer you." The formation spirit said the same thing. Ling Han couldn't help but sigh. thought for a moment and said, "Get another one with battle prowess of 25 stars of the spiritual pedestal tier." "As you wish." The formation spirit disappeared, and another swordsman appeared, even more terrifying than the previous one. Every strand of hair moved without wind, slicing the air and forming whirlpools. Ling Han was surprised. In the vast lands, 20 stars was the limit of a tier's battle prowess, and any higher would be crossing a major tier. However, because the difference between the spiritual pedestal tier and the flower blossom tier was too great, no matter how strong the spiritual pedestal tier was, it couldn't possibly battle the flower blossom tier, so there was a gap in battle prowess. He didn't think that the formation spirit would really give him 25 stars of the spiritual pedestal tier. "Let's fight." Ling Han charged up and the two fought fiercely. This swordsman was indeed stronger than the previous one, and not just by a little bit. An increase of 5 battle prowess stars was also the limit that normal geniuses could surpass. In this battle, Ling Han fought with extreme difficulty. His body was cut with countless sword marks, and even the body of Iron Sheet couldn't withstand such sword attacks. What made him even more depressed was that he couldn't circulate the indestructible heaven scroll. The formation spirit actually couldn't simulate this cultivation technique? What did this mean? The level of the indestructible heaven scroll was higher than this formation, so it couldn't? Ling Han still had time to think, but after paying such heavy injuries, he also fought for the opportunity to use the mysterious 3000. With a slash, the sky was filled with sword light. However, the second swordsman was really strong. He actually slashed 1,000 sword lights, and the last 100 sword lights slashed onto his body, but they actually didn't destroy him. He only lost a left leg and left arm, and a large hole appeared on his chest. However, he still stood on one leg, holding his sword steadily. Ling Han bared his teeth. This was the battle prowess of 25 stars of the spiritual pedestal tier, truly fierce. Phone reading was more refreshing. Chapter 494. Ling Han attacked again. Ding 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 ding, the two fought fiercely. Fortunately, the second swordsman lost a leg and an arm, greatly reducing his battle prowess, and Ling Han finally gained the upper hand. However, he still fought another 1,000 moves before finally suppressing his opponent. He immediately sat down on the ground, feeling so tired that he wanted to sleep. Logically speaking, he was a spiritual body, so he shouldn't feel tired. This should be because his spirit was exhausted too much, causing him to feel extremely tired. "You can rest for 10 minutes. The formation spirit appeared, and with a wave of its hand, all the wounds on Ling Han's body disappeared. Ling Han sat cross-legged. There was no meaning in adjusting his breath here. He wasn't a physical body at all. He stretched out his left hand and operated it, and couldn't help but reveal a hint of joy, because the formation spirit also simulated the demonic pattern on his hand. This came from Azura Demon Emperor, which should be a god-tier existence. Its destructive power was also extremely terrifying, being at least 20 stars of the spiritual infant tier. Ling Han changed his mind, and said, "This time I want to fight 20 stars of the spiritual infant tier." In another testing space, the enemy Ronghuan Xian face was shockingly a flower blossom tier existence. He cackled strangely and said, "Corpse and I are one split." A strange scene appeared. His lower abdomen split open and a corpse soldier actually came out. It was shockingly a third-tier silver-armored corpse, comparable to a flower blossom tier. If it weren't for my tier being too low to fuse with a spiritual infant tier corpse soldier, I could even choose a spiritual infant tier opponent. Ronghuan Xian's face was full of pride. "However, this is enough. I'm only 3 stars of the spiritual pedestal tier, yet I can defeat 5 stars of the flower blossom tier. This surpassing star value is something no one can compare to." He pointed at the flower blossom tier opponent, and ordered the corpse soldier, "Kill him." The corpse soldier immediately charged. In another space, Yin Tianzhao impressively appeared. He hid in the shadows and didn't appear, not because he was afraid of Ling Han, but because he wanted to ambush Ling Han and succeed in one strike, seizing the key from his hands. And his opponent was shockingly also a flower blossom tier being. Aha, this is a spiritual space. I have fused with the memories of an immortal, and in terms of the strength of my divine sense, It surpasses anyone, he said proudly. My true battle prowess is only at the spiritual pedestal tier. But here, it is the limit of the flower blossom tier. This is a mystery realm set up by the 12 generals of the Heavenly River King. According to legends, the Heavenly River King obtained a supreme inheritance and practically ruled over the great Brahma heaven. Though he was ultimately destroyed, his reputation was illustrious. Even his 12 subordinates were ridiculously strong. I am determined to obtain the inheritance of the Heavenly River King, but I will have to return to Brahma heaven to obtain it. Now, I'll first collect the inheritance of the 12 great generals. I believe it will be of great benefit to my strength. Hong, his opponent, had already arrived, and shockingly was a terrifying existence of 20 stars of the flower blossom tier. Battle God pedestal stage 25 stars, this should be Ling Han's limit. He might still be able to win if he had one more star, but what meaning was there in having one more star? Thus he wanted to play big. 20 stars of the spiritual infant tier, his destructive power was enough to defeat such an elite, but the key was that he didn't know how these swordsmen appeared the previous 2 times. Thus, he had long since laid an ambush at the place where the third swordsman would appear, the black pattern already ready to attack. As you wish. The formation spirit immediately disappeared after saying this, and the third swordsman already appeared. He was also extremely strong. Discovering that Ling Han was ambushing him, though there was no time to brandish his sword, he directly launched a divine sense attack at Ling Han. How fast was the divine sense attack? Furthermore, with the divine sense of a spiritual infant tier cultivator, a light touch could crush a spiritual pedestal tier cultivator to death several hundred times. But who was Ling Han? He had a sliver of heaven tier divine sense, and wanting to injure him with divine sense, it had to be at least in the heaven tier, right? Hong, under the divine sense attack, Ling Han was unscathed, but his left hand slapped onto the third swordsman's body. The demonic pattern shone, and the third swordsman disappeared as soon as he appeared. It was settled just like that. The formation spirit appeared again, and it was obviously speechless. In this battle, Ling Han used too many tricks, and definitely wasn't a reflection of true battle prowess. But who told it to copy such an ability from Ling Han? And Ling Han caught a loophole. On the other hand, if it wasn't for Ling Han's powerful divine sense, he definitely would have been shocked to death by that attack, and there wouldn't be any tricks afterwards. You pass. The formation spirit said somewhat gloomily, because it just encountered a monster with a little girl, and it actually couldn't pull out her divine sense, causing her to be unable to participate in the test. I still can't go out? Ling Han asked. When everyone else finishes, the top 3 will be rewarded right here, the formation spirit said. Ling Han nodded and waited patiently. This wait actually lasted 1 day and 1 night. Originally, as long as one came here on this day, they could participate in the test, but after this day ended, the entire test was also declared over, and the top 3 would be judged according to everyone's results. Xiao, all those who didn't enter the top 3 had their divine sense return, and were shaken out of the room one by one. What? I can surpass 7 stars to defeat an opponent, and I actually didn't enter the top 3. Get lost, I surpass 8 stars. Everyone cried out in shock. They were already so strong but didn't even enter the top 3, this was too exaggerated. Yukuan Luan Yongjun Hao, and the other first place of the prodigy roll all had ugly expressions. They could even surpass 10 stars to battle but still couldn't advance into the top 3. This was too big of a blow. Ao Feng and the other middle-aged generation also had gloomy expressions. Similarly surpassing 5 stars to battle, the flower blossom tier was at least comparable to the spiritual pedestal tier's 10 stars, because the higher the tier, the harder it was to surpass one's tier to battle. Didn't the formation spirit consider this? They all did. Previously there were 15 flower blossom tier warriors here, and now there were still 15, which meant that not a single flower blossom tier warrior entered the top 3. This made them feel unfair. The formation spirit definitely didn't consider the difficulty of the tier. I don't accept it. I don't accept it either. We all don't accept it. Everyone shouted, wanting the formation spirit to give an explanation. The formation spirit appeared and said, "You guys are doubting my fairness? Lord Formation Spirit, Have you considered the difficulty of surpassing Flower Blossom Tear's tier to battle? Ao Feng asked politely. The formation spirit that transformed into a child sneered, and said, "This lord has lived a few thousand times longer than you, and actually dares to ask this lord such a question. Then, Lord Formation Spirit, say how many stars did the top 3 surpass?" Someone said, unconvinced. "Right, tell us. I'd like to know how powerful the top 3 are." The Formation Spirit paused slightly and said, "All right, 3rd place Spiritual Pedestal Tier, defeated a 5th layer Flower Blossom Tier." Who? Instantly, many people spurted out, revealing expressions of disbelief. Who didn't know the gap between the Spiritual Pedestal Tier and the Flower Blossom Tier? This was an insurmountable chasm, but a Spiritual Pedestal Tier actually defeated a Flower Blossom Tier, and at the 5th layer Flower Blossom Tier at that. Wasn't this a huge joke? Phone reading was more refreshing. Chapter 495. Good, truly an astonishing seedling. The ultimate elite that had been pretending to sleep earlier immediately opened his eyes, and even started clapping his hands. As for the death of a genius, so what? There was no lack of geniuses here. Furthermore, if he was insta-killed in one move, wouldn't that be trash? He had absolutely no right to enter the Restore Heaven Academy. "Little girl, what's your name?" the ultimate elite asked amiably. He was the absolute saber-sex guardian king, and his name was Guiliang Kai. He possessed the strength of the deity transformation tier, and was enough to crush the current younger generation. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to keep watch. He looked at Hunyo, filled with fondness. If it wasn't for the fact that his cultivation level was too low, he really wanted to take Hunyo as his personal disciple. However, a little girl that was only 6 or 7 years old actually possessed the cultivation level of the spiritual infant tier. Could he possibly teach such a genius? Probably only the sect master and the few old venerable elders had such qualifications. "Nyo is Ling Han's Hunyo," Hunyo said in a slightly roundabout manner. She ran to Ling Han's side and held his hand, looking very innocent and pure. If it wasn't for the fact that the vulgar man's corpse was still on the ground, crackling with lightning, perhaps everyone would be fooled by her current pure and cute appearance. Guiliang Kai swept a glance over Ling Han, and made up his mind. If Ling Han's talent wasn't that outstanding, he would kill Ling Han to avoid affecting the little girl. This kind of seedling could be of great use. More importantly, he was still young, and could easily be brainwashed and instilled with all kinds of ideas. Hunyo once again stepped forward to have her bone age tested. This time, even the disciples were extremely respectful. She had obtained the love and favor of a deity transformation tier law king. Moreover, as long as one wasn't an idiot, they would be able to tell that Hunyo was so fierce at such a young age. So how terrifying would her future prospects be? They could only look up to her. 7 years old, not even 8. The bone age was very quickly tested. However, Hunyo was also very annoyed. It was a bit painful to be pricked by a broken needle, causing her to glare fiercely at the disciple who had tested her bone age. This fierce glare was really terrifying, and had even surpassed the level of the spiritual infant tier. It actually shocked that disciple so much that he wet his pants, and a stench instantly wafted out. Ling Han was also surprised. He had not thought that Hunyo had also broken through to the spiritual infant tier. However, the little girl had always been strange, so no matter how fast her cultivation rose, it was still very normal. "Hung!" Guiliang Kai was very displeased, and shouted at the disciple who had wet his pants, "You still haven't scrammed? Clean yourself up before coming back." Yes. The disciple hurriedly nodded, and turned around to flee. In his heart, however, there was shockingly a comparison of disbelief. Hunyo's gaze was actually even scarier than Guiliang Kai's. How could this be possible? Guiliang Kai was in the deity transformation tier. The deity transformation tier. Ling Han walked up, and the aura of the spiritual infant tier rose slightly, proving that he had the right to take the bone age test. At this moment, he had already recovered his original appearance. Since he had decided to establish a nation and split open the skies, he had decided to show his original appearance to others in the future. A heaven-grade alchemist could do whatever they wanted wherever they went. "Please stretch out your hand." For Hunyo's sake, The disciple who was taking the bone age test had used the word, please. Otherwise, he would have directly shouted that he did not have the right to directly enter the academy, which meant that his talent was not that great, so was there a need to be too polite? But Hunyo's appearance made them understand a certain principle. The world was too big, and it was possible that an absolutely stunning genius would suddenly appear. You dare to be fierce to Nyo's Ling Han. But Hunyo was still not satisfied. She glared at the disciple, the ominous glint in her eyes again. That disciple was instantly so frightened that he sat down on the ground. He felt as if he had been stared at by an ancient beast, and a layer of goosebumps rose all over his body. He almost wet his pants. He finally understood what his previous companion had experienced. This little girl was practically inhuman. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "All right, I won't make a fuss anymore." Only then did Hunyo put on a smile, and happily held onto Ling Han's hand, looking like an obedient little girl. Deceiving someone to death was not worth paying with one's life. Whoever believed him would be unlucky. Ling Han stretched out his hand, and that disciple also wiped off the cold sweat on his face as he climbed to his feet. He held a golden needle in his hand, yet it was continuously trembling. Though he had not wet his pants in shock, he was still quite frightened. Prick. He steadied his mind and pricked at Ling Han's wrist. However, the golden needle that was as thin as a cow's hair was actually unable to pierce through Ling Han's skin. "Don't use origin power to defend," that disciple said in slight displeasure, but he had not even finished speaking when an expression of shock appeared on his face. What a freak, he obviously did not use origin power to protect his body, so how could his skin be so hard that even the bone-piercing needle could not pierce through? The bone-piercing needle was a tool that was specially used to test the age of one's bones. It could easily pierce through the skin of a spiritual infant-tier cultivator, directly reach the bones and pick out a tiny bit of bone. Then, the scale on the needle would indicate the corresponding age. The younger the age, the more accurate the scale. It was measured in years, but after 100 years it would be measured in 10 years, 20 years, or even 50 years. That was because after 400 or 500 years old, a difference of 50 years of cultivation would practically have no effect. But the bone-piercing needle actually could not pierce through Ling Han's skin, and he did not use origin power to defend himself at all. How could this be possible? Hadn't he encountered a freak? Hurry up, hurry up. How long are you going to keep pricking Ling Han? Hunyo was displeased. Do you have a grudge against me? Pricking again and again without stopping to take a breath. With Hunyo's urging, that disciple naturally became even more flustered. Even his hand was trembling even more. Putting aside the fact that he could not pierce through Ling Han's skin, he did not even manage to pierce through his hand. Trash! Guiliang Kai walked forward and pushed that disciple aside. He snatched the bone-piercing needle and pierced it towards Ling Han's hand. Wang! The golden needle descended, and rapidly became shorter. It pierced in? No. Guiliang Kai could not help but be shocked. The bone-piercing needle becoming shorter was not because it had pierced into Ling Han's skin, but because Guiliang Kai's strength was too great, and Ling Han's skin was too hard, so the needle directly bent. That was why it seemed like it had pierced into Ling Han's skin. Fuck this freak. Those people in the surroundings had initially been laughing at that disciple who had made a fool of himself, but now, not a single one of them could laugh. What kind of shocking physique was this? Even if an elite of the deity transformation tier personally attacked, they would not be able to compete. "I'll do it myself," Ling Han said. He drew out the demon birth sword and slashed at himself. Instantly his skin split open. Guiliang Kai was startled at first, then immediately pierced the needle, touching Ling Han's bones, and withdrew the bone-piercing needle. This time a shocked expression appeared on his face again, and he blurted out, 19 years old, not even 20, I'm dizzy. Those people nearby were once again shocked into a daze. Another freak actually appeared. Although he was not as freakish as Hunyo, taking into account his terrifying physique, he was really not inferior. Ling Han put away the demon birth sword. He did not need to circulate the indestructible heaven scroll at all. The body of diamond had already engraved the profound meaning of the heaven scroll into every inch of his flesh. The wound automatically healed, and not even a scar was left, as if that sword strike from before had not even happened. This caused everyone to involuntarily curse him as a freak again. How were they supposed to fight Ling Han? The toughness of his physique was almost at the limit of the spiritual infant tier, right? How many people of the same cultivation level could break through it? Moreover, his recovery ability was even more terrifying. He was completely an existence that could not be dealt with in the same cultivation level. Oh. Chapter 496. The timing of this sneak attack was perfect. It just so happened that everyone was completely focused on escaping for their lives. No one had expected that a sword would suddenly attack them. Even Ling Han had not expected this. His divine sense had not discovered any powerful living beings in the vicinity at all. Most of them were ordinary existences, such as earthworms underground and mice in the bushes. With a sweep of his divine sense, he had swept past them. However, this sword was extraordinarily powerful. There were 9 flashes of sword chi locked on the sword's edge, greatly increasing the attack power of this sword. It was obviously a fatal strike. In such a short time, Ling Han still raised his head, and the face of the sneak attacker immediately reflected in his eyes. Yin Tianzhao, this person impressively advanced into the flower blossom tier. Ling Han couldn't dodge this sword, but it didn't matter. He had the Black Tower, and even if it was 30% faster, Ling Han had enough confidence to enter the Black Tower the instant the sword's edge touched his body. He actually still had the mood to think that this guy deserved to have the memories of a god. Advancing into the flower blossom tier was as easy as taking 2 steps, without the slightest bit of difficulty. However, he was only in the 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier before, but now he instantly advanced into the flower blossom tier. This speed was too terrifying, wasn't it? Wait, they both received rewards in the first stage. He received the 9 Dragons Tyrant Body Art, and if Yin Tianzhao received a medicinal pill, then it would be strange if he instantly advanced into the flower blossom tier. When this thought flashed through his mind, Ling Han planned to enter the Black Tower and summon the golem at the same time. But at this moment, a white figure pounced in front of him and hugged him, using her body to protect him. It was Zhu Xian'er. Silly girl, he was completely fine. But now that he was hugged, he couldn't even enter the Black Tower unless he immediately knocked her unconscious and put her in with him. However, he estimated that just as he raised his hand, Yin Tianzhao's sword would already pierce him. Ling Han didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Are you helping me or harming me? Pooh. He hadn't even finished his thought when Zhu Xian'er was struck by the sword. The tip of the sword entered her body, and almost without the slightest pause, it continued to pierce towards Ling Han. The power of the flower blossom tier was too strong, and even if a spiritual pedestal tier warrior sacrificed himself to protect her, it wouldn't have much effect on reducing the power. However, when the tip of the sword pierced onto Ling Han's body, it was immediately blocked by the Thunder Battle Armor. This was a level 10 treasured armor and was extremely sturdy, so how could it be pierced through? However, the power of the flower blossom tier was too strong. The vast power that came from the long sword passed through the Thunder Battle Armor and entered Ling Han's body, instantly wreaking havoc inside his body. Even if he had body of iron sheet, it was useless. The impact of the destructive power immediately caused him to violently vomit blood, and all the blood vessels in his body ruptured. He was already in such a state, so Zhu Xian'er was obviously in an even worse state. Her delicate body immediately went limp, and her life force rapidly dropped. Ling Han was furious and shouted, "Little stone, kill him for me." His figure flashed, and he had already brought Zhu Xian'er into the Black Tower. "They're gone." Yu cried out in shock. As for the others, the other 3 didn't look the slightest bit surprised. He couldn't help but be driven mad. Could it be that only I find it strange? 2 living people suddenly disappeared. You dare to harm Nyo's Ling Han. Nyo is very angry. Nyo will bite you to death. Nyo's face was filled with killing intent, and she also charged towards Yin Tianzhao, attacking together with the golem in a frenzy. Yin Tianzhao revealed a surprised expression. He knew that Ling Han had a treasured armor on him, so he calculated the opportunity and did not give Ling Han the chance to activate the treasured armor at all, launching a surprise attack in the most effective way. He possessed the memories of an immortal, so he naturally had a way to conceal his own presence and deceive Ling Han's divine sense. He then took advantage of the moment when the Azure Flame Vulture went berserk to suddenly launch a surprise attack, succeeding in one strike. However, an accident still occurred. First, that girl blocked for Ling Han. Although the spiritual pedestal tier wasn't much, there was definitely some influence, and what surprised him even more was that Ling Han and that girl actually disappeared together. He obviously didn't feel the tearing of space, so they shouldn't have teleported away. Could it be that Ling Han had a treasure on him that could contain living things? Such a treasure was quite precious even in his world, and only those with high status could possess it. Instantly his gaze burned. He definitely had to obtain such a treasure. Hong the golem had already charged over, and Hunyo also used her movement technique. Her speed was ridiculously fast, and she bit at him from behind. Yin Tianzhao could only face the enemy first. Spirits of the 5 elements, even he did not dare to underestimate them. After all, he was no longer in the body of an immortal. Inside the Black Tower, Ling Han hurriedly summoned the power of the tower to heal himself, but discovered that it was useless. "Small tower, why can't my injuries recover?" he asked. "Who told you that the Black Tower could heal?" Small Tower appeared and said in a calm tone, "The Black Tower can expel strange evil powers, but has no effect on healing." Ling Han sighed and said, "If I die you'll have to find a new master, and you're still so calm." "Oh, it's just a change of master. So be it. After all, my life is endless," Small Tower said calmly. "Fuck." Ling Han didn't have time to get angry, and channeled a drop of indestructible true fluid. As long as he didn't die instantly, the indestructible true fluid could save him. He hurriedly went to check on Zhu Xian'er's injuries, but immediately frowned. Although this silly girl hadn't been struck in a vital spot, the destructive power of a flower blossom tier warrior was too terrifying, shattering her heart and other internal organs. She was currently bleeding profusely from the inside, and it wouldn't be long before she died. Although Ling Han didn't need her rescue at all, he definitely wouldn't allow someone to die to save him. Ling Han said in a low voice, "Small Tower, think of a way to stabilize her injuries. I'm going to concoct a pill." Small Tower sensed slightly and said, "She's already in a state of near death, and I need to consume source power to maintain her injuries from worsening." "You have to think clearly, my current source power is limited. It'll be gone after using it, and I can't manifest to help you." "No need to think, she can't die," Ling Han said without hesitation. "All right." Small Tower nodded, and with a light shake, rays of divine light immediately enveloped Zhu Xian'er's delicate body. A miraculous aura circulated, locking in the little bit of life force she had left, preventing her injuries from worsening. Ling Han's divine sense probed outside the Black Tower, and seeing that the rock spirit in Hunyo had already gained the upper hand, he relaxed and concentrated on concocting a pill. There were already a lot of spirit herbs in the Black Tower, but there were still too few high-grade ones, so the only one he could concoct was the Earth-grade low-level White Phoenix Water True Pill, a panacea for healing. It might not be able to heal Zhu Xian'er's injuries, but Ling Han had no confidence at all. Could he add in a drop of indestructible true fluid? Ling Han suddenly had a strange idea. This was a panacea for healing, and as long as one wasn't dead, a single drop could instantly heal injuries. He'd already circulated it just now, and now his injuries were completely healed. However, how should he take out this indestructible true fluid? "Small Tower, do you have any ideas?" he asked. Chapter 497. Indestructible True Fluid is only effective for those who cultivate the indestructible Heaven Scroll. Even if you take it out, the effect will decrease sharply, Small Tower said indifferently. Decrease sharply but still effective, right? Ling Han's eyes lit up. Yes, this is a human body precious medicine extracted from the indestructible Heaven Scroll. It has the best effect on the user, and second on those who also cultivate the indestructible Heaven Scroll. For others, the effect will decrease 100-fold, Small Tower said calmly. As long as it's effective, Ling Han was the alchemy emperor. He forcibly added 5 drops of indestructible true fluid into the recipe of the White Phoenix Water True Pill. This was also the total amount he could extract now. Just now, he used 1 drop to save himself. Only half an hour later, he refined the medicinal pill. There was only 1 pill, condensed with the essence of 5 drops of indestructible true fluid, and had a shocking recovery effect. Try it as a last resort. Ling Han fed the medicinal pill to Zhu Xian'er, but she was already in a state of near death. Her teeth were tightly shut, so how could she swallow it? Ling Han tore off the veil on her face, pinched open her teeth, and forced the medicinal pill in. Then he poured a mouthful of diluted spiritual fluid into her mouth, but the pill entered her mouth, but she couldn't swallow it no matter what. Si-chan, do me a favor and help her breathe. Ling Han hurriedly called Li Si-chan over. Li Si-chan saw Zhu Xian'er's heavily injured appearance and was first shocked, then stunned. Her eyes revealed disbelief, and she muttered, "How can there be such a beautiful person?" Only now did Ling Han notice that he tore off Zhu Xian'er's veil, revealing her true appearance. As expected, she was breathtakingly beautiful, not losing to the heavenly phoenix divine maiden in the slightest. The difference was that the heavenly phoenix divine maiden was like a goddess of war, full of heroism, bright and dazzling and charming to the bone. Zhu Xian'er, on the other hand, was cold like a bright moon, untainted by the mortal world. Of course, in terms of temperament, the heavenly phoenix divine maiden was definitely superior. After all, she was one of the only 7 elites of the heaven tier in his last life. That kind of soaring confidence and elegance was not something an ordinary person could hope to achieve. Don't just stand there, hurry. Ling Han hurriedly urged. The tower's origin energy was about to run out again. Li Si-chan hurriedly walked over and passed a breath into Zhu Xian'er's mouth, making her swallow the white phoenix water true pill. It was visible to the naked eye that Zhu Xian'er's wounds were recovering at an extremely fast speed, and so were her internal organs, but she still had not woken up. Under the impact of the flower blossom tear's will of martial art, her divine sense was also close to being destroyed. Ling Han sighed. His divine sense was injured, and he was also helpless. Now he had only saved Zhu Xian'er's life, but whether she could wake up and when she would wake up would depend on her desire to live and the tenacity of her will. Si-chan, take care of her, he said. Then his killing intent flared, and he exited the Black Tower in a flash. However, Yan Tianzhao had already disappeared. He ran. Hu Niu and Small Rock are chasing, Ken Yi said. The corner of Yu Kaiyu's mouth twitched, and he mumbled, "Why am I the only one that feels strange?" 2 people disappeared into thin air, and now another one appeared out of thin air. Could it be that everyone is abnormal, or am I the only abnormal one? Young Master Han, how is Fairy Zhu? He hurriedly asked. Won't die. Ling Han nodded. Just as they were speaking, the rock spirit had already returned, and Hu Niu sat on its shoulder. Damn it, he slipped away and only bit off an arm. Stinks. Hu Niu flung off a severed arm. Lu Yutong and the others were all shocked. Even with the help of the rock spirit, the flower blossom tear against the flower blossom tear, and still managed to tear off one of Yan Tianzhao's arms, Hu Niu's battle prowess was truly powerful. Ling Han's expression was still cold. Yan Tianzhao possessed the memories of an immortal, and was almost torn into pieces at the time, but didn't he recover completely afterward? For such an existence, regrowing a severed limb probably wasn't a difficult task. He decided that if he saw Yan Tianzhao again, and if he hadn't reached the flower blossom tier, then he'd directly let Small Tower give him power, and he'd definitely kill Yan Tianzhao with his sword. It was he who concocted the alchemical pill that woke Yan Tianzhao from his slumber. This was the cause that he planted, so he naturally had to deal with this effect. Young Master Han, Ling Han. Yu Kaiyu ran over. Where did you run off to just now? Also, where's Fairy Zhu? Why aren't you guys curious? Why am I the only one curious? Ling Han blinked and said, Are your eyes blurred? Blurred, your sister, Zhu Xian'er obviously wasn't here, so give a reason. But Ling Han didn't explain at all, and Yu Kaiyu could only twitch the corner of his mouth. Could he still grab Ling Han's neck and force him to explain? Let's leave this place first, Ling Han said. The 5 of them continued forward. With Yan Tianzhao's sneak attack this time, they were even more careful. But the rest was surprisingly smooth. They didn't encounter any attacks from demonic beasts, and smoothly exited the mountain forest. Thinking about it, it should be that azure flame eagles might that intimidated the other demonic beasts, causing them to all hide in their nests, not daring to come out. In front of them was a flat plain. In the far distance there was a building, which was extremely conspicuous on the grassy plain. This should be the location of the second test. The 5 of them quickly walked over. Very soon they arrived in front of the building. Ling Han and the others came relatively early, so there were only a mere dozen or so people here. One day later, the test will begin. The formation spirit appeared and said indifferently, then glanced at Ling Han. You really know how to cause trouble. Ling Han said weakly, what trouble did I cause? The entire forest is in an uproar. Isn't it your fault? The formation spirit snorted. Ling Han laughed mischievously and said, there's no rule that I can't do that, right? You only cause trouble for me. The formation spirit said discontentedly, if it weren't for your trouble, the number of people who could reach the second stage would be reduced by at least half. The dozen or so people who arrived first were all shocked. What did Ling Han do to have such an effect? Chapter 498. From the moment Zhu Xian'er stepped forward bravely and blocked the sword for him, Ling Han treated Zhu Xian'er as a friend. Presumably, Zhu Xian'er wasn't someone who couldn't keep a secret, so he only hesitated and said, this is inside my spatial spirit tool. Zhu Xian'er was dazed at first, then revealed a shocked expression and said, how is it possible spatial spirit tools can't hold living things? Ling Han smiled and said, aren't you inside? Zhu Xian'er was dazed for a while, then seemed to accept this fact and said, but how can this spatial spirit tool be so big? It's like a world. So this secret can't be known by others, Ling Han said seriously. Zhu Xian'er nodded hurriedly. A spatial spirit tool that was almost infinitely big and could hold living things, the value was indescribable. No wonder Ling Han kept such a secret. However, now that Ling Han actually let her know this secret, it instantly made her feel as if she ate honey, sweet to the bottom of her heart. Xian'er will definitely keep this secret well, she said seriously. Recuperate well. There's plenty of spirit medicine here, and origin crystals can be used at will. First heal the wounds of your soul, or else you can't cultivate at all, Ling Han said. And Zhu Xian'er nodded obediently. She didn't wear a veil anymore, and her beautiful face exuded a soul-stirring beauty that made Ling Han's heart beat faster. Fortunately, he was used to Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden's beauty in his previous life, or else he might really be charmed by this little girl. Ling Han didn't immediately leave the Black Tower. After coming out from the Divine Temple, he was entangled by all sorts of things, so he didn't have the chance to study the 2 patterned beast bones. Also, there were 2 divine spirits' corpses. Inside the Black Tower, he no longer feared the pressure of the gods, and studied them carefully. These 2 gods' remains seemed to be complete, but the divine essence within was almost completely exhausted, obviously sucked clean by the blood-sucking bugs over a long period of time. I wonder if the god spirit's bones can be used as medicine after grinding them into powder, Ling Han murmured. However, even though they aren't humans, they have a human form. Refining human bones into medicine feels pretty disgusting. Forget it, let's just leave it for now. He picked up the 2 demonic beast skulls and carefully studied the 2 bone patterns on them. If he could comprehend the profound mysteries within, then his combat strength would increase by a lot. A night passed and Ling Han exited the Black Tower. The second stage of the test was about to begin. Those who want to participate in the test go in. As long as you can walk out, you will get a reward. The top 3 will get a grand prize. The formation spirit said. The shorter the time, the better the reward. Everyone was excited. In the first stage, only the top 3 would receive a reward, but in this stage, as long as one passed, they would receive a reward. It was likely that the difficulty would increase by a lot. They all entered the building, and the scenery in front of them immediately changed. They appeared in a place full of fog, surrounded by stone pillars with all kinds of patterns engraved on them. This time many people entered, but now everyone was alone, and no one else could be seen. Formation, Ling Han said. The second stage turned out to be a formation. Breaking out of the formation would be considered a success. and the person with the fastest speed would receive a generous reward. He spun inside the formation and the fog rose. Hong, a demonic beast, suddenly appeared and pounced at him. It was chopped into pieces by his sword, but there was no rain of blood. This was formed by the formation and not a physical body. From the strength of the demonic beast, this formation is 5th tier, mainly to confuse the mind, supplemented by the demonic spirit attack formed from spiritual qi. Ling Han quickly figured out the profound mysteries of the formation. This should be adjusted according to each person's different tier. Or else if a flower blossom tier monster came, how could he block it? The prerequisite for breaking the formation was to be able to withstand the formation's attack. Otherwise, he wouldn't even have his life, so how could he break the formation? Ling Han's divine sense was clear. He entered many historical sites in his last life, and had no lack of understanding of formations. He was indeed a novice in setting up a formation, but he was a veteran in breaking it. Soon he figured out some clues and started walking inside the formation. Sometimes he turned left, sometimes right, almost without any pattern. However, after a dozen or so minutes, the front suddenly opened up, and he walked out of the formation. However, he wasn't the first person. Hunyao had already appeared on the other side, and was currently gnawing on a piece of meat out of boredom. When she saw Ling Han, she immediately ran over cheerfully. Ignoring the grease on her hands, she hugged Ling Han and said, "Niao missed you." Ling Han smiled and said, "When did Niao arrive?" "Seems like a long time," Hunyao said, biting her finger. "This girl is very strange." The formation spirit appeared, pointing at Hunyao, and said, "I've never seen such a person, actually not affected by the formation at all, and not moving according to the formation's rules at all, yet walking out of the formation." Ling Han was startled. For example, when he had walked out of the Great Formation previously, he had walked according to the train of thought of the person who had set up the formation. He had definitely not walked out in a straight line. Instead, he had to go around and around, as if he was walking through a maze. But hearing the formation spirit's meaning, Hunyao didn't walk according to the formation at all, and just directly ran out. This was truly shocking. "Niao is a genius," Hunyao said proudly. "I don't know if you're a genius or not, but you definitely won first place this time, and broke all the records," the formation spirit said. "You can choose a treasure as a reward." Ling Han's heart moved, and he said, Niao, ask him for 9 dragons tyrant body art." Hunyao agreed crisply and said, "Niao wants 9 dragons tyrant body art. Give it to Ling Han." The formation spirit glanced at Ling Han, then said to Hunyao, "Such a precious opportunity, you want to give it to someone else?" Niao is just that willful. Hunyao put her hands on her hips, and said indifferently. The formation spirit could only be speechless, and threw a ball of light at Ling Han, and said, "Count yourself lucky, or else with your results, you couldn't possibly get this cultivation technique." Ling Han smiled and placed the ball of light on his head. Instantly, innumerable specks of light entered his mind, and fused together with the 9 dragons tyrant body art from before. With this, if he cultivated it to perfection, his physical body could reach the power of 6 true dragons. However, although Ling Han was now second, the second stage's test would last for an entire day. Some people might have just arrived and started the test, so his results couldn't be determined until the end of the day. People walked out one after another. These formations weren't too difficult, and couldn't stump true geniuses. Breaking the formations was only a matter of time. The day passed quickly, and Ling Han's results were indeed second, while the third was actually Lin Xiangqin. Didn't expect it, right? This lady's breasts are big, but my mind is just as nimble. This woman fluttered a coquettish glance at Ling Han, and even stuck out her majestic breasts, still having a fiery style. Ling Han could choose 3 types of medicinal pills, which made him very depressed. What medicinal pill couldn't he refine? Might as well give it to this formation secrets. He bargained with the formation spirit to see if he could exchange it for other rewards, but was coldly refused by the formation spirit. Truly willful, he ridiculed inwardly. Oh. Chapter 499. Yuan Changhe. Li Fengyu and Li Zixian exclaimed at the same time. Since you know who I am, why haven't you scrammed yet? The well-dressed youngster sneered. Seeing Ling Han somewhat perplexed, Qin Lianyu explained, Yuan Changhe, a disciple of the Huayun sect. Like Wenren Qian, he's always been cultivating in seclusion, and no one's heard of him. But recently, he suddenly appeared and defeated many veteran spiritual infant-tier elites. His strength is truly very powerful. Some even put him on par with Yao Huiyu, Small Saber King, and the others. Ling Han shook his head and said, Small Saber King and Lang Yitian are almost 40 years old. And how old is Yao Huiyu? They're clearly 2 generations apart, so how can they be compared together? However, I don't believe that this guy is stronger than Yao Huiyu. What are you guys still muttering about? Yuan Changhe said, displeased. Since you know of his fame, why haven't you scrammed yet? Li Fengyu said in a low voice, I'll draw his attention, you guys go first. He immediately put on a smile and jogged towards Yuan Changhe. Big brother Yuan, I'm Li Fengyu. I've long heard of Big brother Yuan's fame, and to be able to see you today, it's truly the fortune of 3 lifetimes. Big brother Yuan is indeed awe-inspiring, just standing there emitting a scorching golden light that shines upon this little brother's heart, making this little brother feel as if there's an additional red sun in this little brother's life, guiding this little brother's direction. He spoke unceasingly, causing Ling Han and the others to stare dumbfounded. There was actually someone who could speak such mushy words so smoothly and not blush at all, unlike them who were about to puke. Yuan Changhe, however, enjoyed it greatly. His talent was shockingly high, and previously, he had always been cultivating in seclusion, isolated from the world like an ascetic monk. However, his heart was extremely proud, desiring to be acknowledged, worshipped, and admired by others. Recently, he finally shone brightly, and the vanity in his heart naturally swelled up all at once. At this moment, being flattered by Li Fengyu, every slap instantly hit his bones, making him feel elated and not the slightest bit mushy. Li Fengyu spoke for a long time, and his mouth was almost dry. Turning around, he saw that everyone was looking at him with their mouths half open, making him anxious, and said, I'm almost out of words here, planning to start from the beginning again. Why haven't you guys run yet? Ling Han laughed loudly and said, Isn't this a test of how far you can fabricate? He now even had the confidence to cut down Small Saber King with his sword, and needing to flee upon hearing of Yuan Chang, he was truly a joke. Yuan Chang he also abruptly reacted, and couldn't help but reveal an angry expression as he said, Good, you dare to trick me. Li Fengyu was so frightened that he hurriedly broke into a run. Although he was also a genius, he definitely wasn't at Yuan Changhe's level, not to mention that he was a major tier lower than the latter, so how could he dare to fight? Brotherling, it's yours. He called out. Despicable guy, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to beat you flat. Yuan Changhe roared. He originally wanted to say kill, but this stage strictly forbade killing, and he didn't want to lose the qualifications to enter the Restore Heaven Academy because of this. Brotherling, take care of this guy, and I'll gift my sister to you as a wife, Li Fengyu called out again. Brother! Li Zixian reprimanded with a red face. How could he be like this, betraying her just like that? Ling Han doesn't want this ugly woman. Hunyo rushed out, deciding not to give Ling Han the chance to make a move. She turned into a flash of lightning, and appeared in front of Yuan Changhe in a flash. Her small fist shot out, blasting towards the latter. Yuan Changhe was shocked. He didn't think that a little girl would actually have such a fast speed, and even more so didn't think that she was in existence on the same tier as him. This practically shattered his confidence. He had always been proud of his own tier. A 27-year-old spiritual infant tier was practically unprecedented, but now a 7 or 8-year-old little girl was shockingly also in the spiritual infant tier, so what was there to be proud of? Chang! He drew out a treasured sword but didn't unsheath it, and merely used the scabbard to block Hunyo's punch. However, lightning surged, and spread towards his arm through the scabbard. Hung! He snorted lightly, and flames surged on his body, clashing fiercely with the lightning. Martial intent turned into resplendent rays of light, interweaving into various shapes in the air. Hunyo somersaulted in the air and retreated. Ling Han nodded. No wonder this person could be compared to Yao Huiyu and the others. His strength was indeed very strong, being able to take on Hu Niu's attack head-on and not be at a disadvantage. There weren't many spiritual infant-tier cultivators that could do this. Little did he know, Yuan Cheng, he was even more shocked. He was extremely conceited, thinking that even Yao Huiyu and Small Saber King weren't his match. This time, he descended upon the Restore Heaven Academy and began his path to becoming a legend. Who would have thought that before he even entered the academy, a little girl that randomly ran out would be able to fight him on equal footing? Although he didn't use his ultimate move, it would be clear as soon as Kajia made a move. This little girl couldn't be underestimated. Ugly, come chase Niu, Hu Niu said, clapping her hands. Yuan Cheng, he snorted, unsheathed his sword and said, "You guys let a little girl stand up for you guys? Humph, you really have no shame." Ling Han laughed loudly and said, "You can't even beat the youngest among us, so don't tell me you still want to challenge others? You should be grateful that we didn't bully you and just randomly sent a little girl to play with you." These words were indeed true. A little girl of 7 or 8 years old was definitely just casually playing around. Who would believe that this little girl was a great expert at the spiritual infant tier? Yuan Cheng, he couldn't refute, and could only be secretly gloomy. Who asked him to encounter such a freak? Hu Niu, beat him to your heart's content. I want to take him as a lackey, Ling Han said with a smile. Okay, Hu Niu agreed crisply. Leave it to Niu. Damn it. Yuan Cheng, he was furious when he heard this. She actually wanted to take him as a lackey, treating him like some random cat or dog. He immediately unsheathed his sword and charged towards Ling Han. Your opponent is Niu. Hu Niu's figure flashed, and she already appeared in front of Yuan Cheng, her small fist heading straight for the latter's face. Yuan Cheng, he was helpless and could only tilt his head. At the same time, he thrust out his sword and stabbed towards Hu Niu. This could be a formidable opponent whose strength was not inferior to his, so how could he dare to let her attack him as she pleased? It was really possible that he'd be beaten up so badly that even his own mother wouldn't recognize him. The two immediately engaged in a fierce battle. Yuan Cheng, he was indeed very strong, being able to withstand Hu Niu head-on. At least for the time being, he didn't look like he was going to lose, causing everyone to click their tongues in wonder. They were all generous with their praise for him. One had to know that the skeletal monsters from before were all blasted down by Hu Niu head-on. However, when Yuan Cheng, he heard this, he felt extremely uncomfortable in his heart. He'd actually fallen to the point where he could only stand side by side with a little girl. He roared and finally unleashed his ultimate move. As the sword danced, he seemed to have turned into a sword top, spinning rapidly towards Hu Niu. More than 20 flashes of sword chi crisscrossed, extremely terrifying. Oh! This was because he was standing at a different height. He was now in the spiritual pedestal tier, and had eaten so many great tonics that when released, wouldn't it be enough for a normal person to immediately cross over to the body refining tier? On the contrary, if you let a body refining tier martial artist eat so many tonics, he would have long been stuffed to death. However, the beginning was fast because I'm already in the spiritual pedestal tier, and the following progress shouldn't be so fast. Ling Han said to himself and cracked a smile. Body arts would be his trump card. In the future, who thought he was at the end of his tether? But he would suddenly explode with terrifying brute force and turn the tables in one move. He exited the Black Tower and started a fire to cook with Hu Niu. Now that he had an additional expense, he was more and more hungry for food. In the future, the Black Tower has to raise more beasts, Ling Han said. Or else he and Hu Niu's stomachs really wouldn't be able to hold up. Hu Niu agreed deeply and stared at Ling Han, drooling. That egg can't be eaten, Ling Han said hurriedly. The little girl still didn't give up and didn't forget the Azure Flame Eagle's egg. Hung stingy. Hu Niu pouted, but when the food was cooked, she immediately ate happily. When they were about to finish eating, they saw someone climb up from below with difficulty. It was Shenzhong Cheng. He really didn't expect that the one who rushed to the third place wasn't an older generation flower blossom tier warrior, nor the top of the young prodigy roll, but the white-robed sword king who only rushed to the 8th place this year. Ling Han nodded. These 3 stages actually didn't test strength. Of course, if it was a monster like Ling Han and Hu Niu, who obviously only had the cultivation of the 2nd or 3rd layer of the spiritual pedestal tier, but whose strength was comparable to the 9th layer, then it was another matter. Overall, this stage still tested one's toughness. Spiritual pedestal tier cultivators had long opened up their spiritual ocean, and their origin power was endless. They also built a spiritual pedestal almost reaching the heavens, and climbing like this definitely wouldn't exhaust their strength. However, the gravity was too strong and it was easy to cause fatigue. Thus, who was fast and who was slow depended on each person's willpower. If you had to rest after every few steps, how could you be fast? This swordsman's gaze was like a sword, flickering with tenacity and decisiveness. Obviously, he wouldn't stop until he reached the end. His body was like Ling Han's before, covered in sweat, and his hair was completely drenched. However, when a man sweated, not only did it not give others a feeling of being in a sorry state, it instead emitted an endless air of masculinity. Men should be like this. Ling Han gave up on the idea of inviting Shen Zhongcheng over for a meal. Shen Zhongcheng was squeezing out all the tenacity in his body, and it was very possible that he would experience a great explosion. Either his cultivation level would soar, or he would obtain a great breakthrough in his sword arts. Hu Niu, we can't be lazy, let's charge to the top in one go, he said. Charge! Hu Niu raised her small fist. The 2 of them also began to climb again. Their strength surpassed their tier by too much, and this place was defined by tier to determine the gravity each person endured. So the 2's speed was ridiculously fast, surpassing Shen Zhongcheng in an instant. Ling Han, however, sighed. He was too relaxed, so relaxed that he couldn't squeeze out his own body's limit, which wouldn't bring about the effect of tempering, truly a pity. But on the other hand, that was also because he had long raised his limit above this level, which was why he could be so relaxed now, having already walked through this process. Thinking that way, he felt more at ease. Chapter 501. For others, this stairway to heaven was a huge test, but for Ling Han and Hu Niu, these 2 monsters, it was only slightly strenuous. It was completely impossible for it to push them to their limits. Thus, Ling Han soon lost interest. After climbing for a day, he stopped to cultivate origin power, and then improve his brute force. On the other hand, cultivating 9 Dragons' tyrant body art was extremely painful. Every posture wasn't something a normal person could do, and each time it made him vomit blood. No wonder he had to eat nutritious food, or else he'd die from vomiting blood every day, so how the hell was he supposed to cultivate? Every time Ling Han finished his cultivation and started to eat meat with Hu Niu, the white-robed sword king would catch up to him. Every day that passed, his brilliance did not diminish in the slightest, and his eyes were even brighter than before. Ling Han could tell that something was planted in this swordsman's heart, and once it sprouted, a shocking change would occur. This was Shen Zhongcheng's opportunity. After a whole 9 days, Ling Han and Hu Niu finally arrived at the end of the stairway to heaven, and there was actually another piece of land here, which was indescribably strange. It was as if it had originally been a complete piece of land, but had been forcibly broken off by a great elite. One was placed on top, and the other was placed on bottom, forming a gigantic stairway. Suddenly, a strange wave came from below, emitting a shocking power, the aura fluctuating like a tide. Someone broke through, and it's the flower blossom tier. Ling Han was surprised. After another while, the wave appeared again. A second person is breaking through to the flower blossom tier. Ling Han appeared even more surprised. From the spiritual pedestal tier to the flower blossom tier, this was a process of breaking away from mortals. Although the flower blossom tier was far from being called gods, flower blossom tier warriors could fly with their physical bodies and survive as long as they absorbed spiritual qi, which wasn't something mortals could compare to. Thus, this step was extremely difficult and the commotion was ridiculously large. In half a day, Ling Han actually felt 7 waves of breaking through to the flower blossom tier, and it definitely wasn't the same person consecutively breaking through 7 times due to failure. Those should be prodigies who had long been stuck in the 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier, and were originally only a step away from the flower blossom tier. But due to the fact that this step into the flower blossom tier was too difficult, they had not taken the step forward for a long time. However, in this place he was able to force out his limits and even surpass them. This was a type of sublimation of his will, and it was extremely easy for him to enter the state of being one with the world. He would be able to completely see through himself and comprehend the Tao in a single night, thus taking a crucial step forward. No wonder so many people wanted to enter. Even if they couldn't obtain any treasures, just this experience was worth it. Of course, those 7 people could break through because their accumulation in the spiritual pedestal tier was deep enough. Otherwise, if you had just stepped into the 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier and wanted to break through to the flower blossom tier just by walking like this, that would be a joke. This place only played a supporting and promoting role. The key was still on him. 7 people wasn't the limit. On the afternoon of the 10th day, another 3 people began to break through to the flower blossom tier one after another. Obviously, these 10 people couldn't possibly arrive in 10 days' time, because breaking through to the flower blossom tier would take at least 10 days' time. When they finished breaking through, the 1 month's time would almost be up, and they would have to leave the mystery realm. The white-robed Sword King was the 3rd to arrive. After taking the last step, he sat down cross-legged. Spiritual chi rolled and poured into his body almost visibly, as if several invisible hands were guiding it. Looking closely, the spiritual chi turned into 3 fierce beasts that leaped into Shen Zhongcheng's body from different angles. E3 beasts phenomenon. Ling Han was surprised. The legend is true. So completely surpassing oneself would indeed trigger a reaction from some mysterious power of heaven and earth. It said that a few spiritual beasts could be triggered, and one could finally break through a few small tiers. This time, Shen Zhongcheng really struck it big. Spiritual chi rolled over and continuously turned into the form of fierce beasts that leaped towards Shen Zhongcheng 3 by 3, continuously increasing his cultivation. In only half an hour's time, a powerful force surged out of Shen Zhongcheng's body. He suddenly opened his eyes, which were as bright as 2 small suns, but the light immediately faded, but they were still filled with deterrents like sharp swords. 5th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier. Sure enough, he suddenly soared 3 tiers. Ling Han was extremely envious. Why did he have to be so strong that the tests here couldn't force him to his limits? The 4th to arrive was actually Qin Yi. His killing intent overflowed all over his body, and he actually held a saber in his right hand. His eyes emitted a terrifying, ominous glint, and he was completely fearless. It was as if even if a shattering void tier elite appeared in front of him, he would unhesitatingly strike with his saber and cut him in half. This tempering of willpower had finally allowed him to completely release his murderous aura. Qin Yi immediately sat down. Hong spiritual chi rolled, and similarly turned into 3 strange beasts that surged into his body. Sigh, they were all angering him, weren't they? Ling Han shook his head, but then revealed a smile. After this tempering, Qin Yi could be considered to have truly stepped onto the path of an elite, and his future accomplishments were limitless. When he was in Rain Country, he had a feeling that Qin Yi might become the 2nd Setting Sun Saber Emperor, but now this feeling became a certainty. As long as Qin Yi could keep on living and keep on fighting, he could become such an elite. Ling Han rubbed his chin. Should he let Qin Yi fly off on his own? If he stayed by his side and always received his protection, then he would never be able to become a true elite, and could only become a powerful hired thug. People arrived one after another, but the number was extremely small, and Yukuan Luan and the other top-ranking figures of the previous generation or the generation before the prodigy role were nowhere to be seen. They probably belonged to one of the 10 that were breaking through to the flower blossom tier. Ling Han only thought for a moment, and then threw this thought aside. He was extremely eager to pass the 3rd stage and obtain the complete 9 Dragons Tyrant body art. At the end of the day, only 14 people passed. People like Lu Yutong and Yu Kaiyu still hadn't come up. Obviously, their willpower wasn't firm enough or perhaps freakishly strong. Even Shen Zhongcheng spent over 9 days to arrive, and he even triggered the 3 beasts phenomenon, which showed how difficult it was. Thus it was normal that they couldn't come. The formation spirit appeared, swept its gaze over the 14 people, and said, "The 3rd stage tests alchemy ability. There's no absolute standard, and I'll make a judgment." Instantly, 13 out of the 14 people gave up. Why fuck, none of them were alchemists, so what did they take the test for? The formation spirit's expression was a bit strange as it stared at Ling Han and said, "You're also an alchemist? You're actually the only alchemist. How unfortunate." Ling Han deliberately sighed. The formation spirit thought for a moment and said, "Even if you're the only one, if the alchemical pill you refine isn't of a high enough level, you still won't get any good rewards." Was this belittling an alchemy emperor? Chapter 502. Hurry up and start. Ling Han was impatient, as if the last part of the 9 Dragons Tyrant body art was already beckoning him. "Kid, you're too arrogant." Even the formation spirit was grinding its teeth. Ling Han laughed loudly and entered the building in front of him. Xiao, his figure flickered, and he appeared in a pill room. All around him were walls, and there were rows of shelves filled with all kinds of medicinal ingredients. In the middle was a pill furnace. He sensed for a moment and his divine sense was pulled out again. Ling Han couldn't help but exclaim that it was a pity. The medicinal ingredients here were at least 9th tier, and he wanted to take the pill away after refining it. He didn't think that it was just a mental space and everything was illusory. Here, you don't have to worry about the limits of the fire temperature. Whatever ingredients you want to refine, they're all on the shelves. If you don't have them, tell me, and I'll bring them for you. The formation spirit also appeared. Ling Han couldn't help but ask, "What level of pill do I have to refine to get the last part of the 9 Dragons Tyrant body art?" The formation spirit wanted to roll its eyes. "You haven't even started refining, and you're already eyeing the reward. You're so confident." It paused and said, "Based on your age, you have to at least refine a high-level Earth-grade pill to be qualified. And the quality of the formed pill? Why didn't you say so earlier?" Ling Han was already taking out the ingredients on the shelves, his speed unusually fast. "In order to be safe, I'll refine a low-level heaven-grade blue rainbow soul cleansing pill." The corner of the formation spirit's mouth visibly twitched. "Heaven-grade pill? Kid, you sure talk big." But Ling Han had already begun. His hands moved like flowing water, filtering, cleaning, purifying, and finally opening the furnace to refine the pill. The entire process was done in one go, indescribably smooth. The formation spirit's mouth slowly opened, and finally became a circle. It was obviously too shocked. How could there be such a freak in the world? Shocking talent in martial art, outstanding performance in formations, and finally even more stunning in alchemy. Would such an all-round monster really appear in the world? Although he had spent a long time concocting the heaven-grade elixir, Ling Han only stopped after 3 days and 3 nights, feeling extremely tired. After all, it was a heaven-grade medicinal pill, and the current strength of his spiritual consciousness was too weak. Refining a furnace would not be enough. The formation spirit hadn't even formed the pill. All of this was illusory, changing within its array formation. Thus, it clearly saw every step of Ling Han's pill concoction, so it naturally knew whether the pill had been successfully concocted or not, and how many stars it was at. For you. The formation spirit threw out a ball of light. Needless to say, this was definitely the last part of the 9 Dragons Tyrant body art. Ling Han hurriedly caught the ball of light and pressed it against his forehead. Sure enough, the 9 Dragons Tyrant body technique changed again and was finally complete. Kid, you have the qualifications to become an inner disciple of the 12 palaces. How about it? Which palace do you want to be a disciple of? Ling Han smiled and said, "Send my consciousness back into my body first. I'll give you something, but don't let anyone know." "TSK, so secretive." The formation spirit snorted, but did as he was told. Ling Han's consciousness returned. He was still in the building, but it was no longer a sealed stone room, and he also regained contact with the Black Tower. He took out the key to the Sagittarius Palace and shook it in his hand. "You actually have the key to open the Sagittarius Palace," the formation spirit exclaimed. "Why didn't you take it out earlier?" "If I took it out earlier, how could I obtain the 9 Dragons Tyrant body technique?" Ling Han asked in response. "Stinking brat." The formation spirit muttered, and suddenly laughed as if rejoicing in someone else's misfortune. I'll tell you an unfortunate piece of news. The Sagittarius Palace has already been opened for the first time. So all the treasures in the palace have already been taken clean. There are only 2 things left that can't be taken away. Fuck. Haha. The formation spirit laughed loudly. It had been displeased with Ling Han for a long time, and now that it could disgust Ling Han for once, it instantly felt great. It paused, and then said, however, the truly valuable things in the Sagittarius Palace are also those 2 things that can't be taken away. What are they? Ling Han asked, hoping for the best. A mystical power and a coordinate, the formation spirit said. A mystical power. Ling Han was delighted. This was good stuff, but what was the coordinate? He asked, what coordinate? All those years ago, the Heavenly River King once discovered a shocking treasure trove, and only took away a few things, allowing him to shake the great Brahma heaven. These coordinates are the location of the treasure trove, the formation spirit answered. Ling Han suddenly realized that the things Yin Tianzhao wanted to take away had to be those coordinates. Are these coordinates only in the Sagittarius Palace? Ling Han asked again. No, they're in all 12 palaces. Being able to inherit the inheritance of the 12 palaces obviously qualifies to obtain the treasures left behind by the Heavenly River King, the formation spirit said. Right, what kind of place is that great Brahma heaven? Ling Han asked. The formation spirit rolled its eyes and said, I'm only the core of this formation, and not a know-it, so how would I know? Fuck, he was actually looked down upon by a formation spirit. Ling Han thought about it and said, is there anyone else who brought the key this time? You can even guess this. The formation spirit was surprised. Before you, there was indeed a brat who brought the key, and was in such a hurry that he didn't participate in the previous test. Is it called Wen Yijian? Ling Han's heart trembled. That's right. As expected, Wen Yijian didn't coincidentally encounter the opening of the 12 heaven mystery realms, and probably kept an eye on the North region situation after obtaining the key. Which palace did he open? Scorpio Palace. Ling Han thought about it and said, since the Sagittarius Palace was already opened, that treasure trove still hasn't been taken away? No. The formation spirit shook its head, returned the key to Ling Han and said, this is not only the key to open the Sagittarius Palace, but also the token to enter the treasure trove. There's a restriction set by the Heavenly River King, and without the key you can't enter at all. However, the key can only be used once before disappearing. Since it appeared again, it means that the previous holder didn't enter the treasure trove. So that was how it was. After you leave here, I'll take you to the Sagittarius Palace, the formation spirit said again. All right. When Ling Han walked out, quite a few people immediately fixed their gazes on him. Everyone knew that Ling Han was a heaven-grade alchemist, so not only did he pass this round, he must have also obtained an extremely good result, so he must have obtained an astonishing treasure. Ao Feng and the other Flower Blossom tier warriors all revealed killing intent. If they weren't afraid of the formation spirit, they definitely would have made a move to snatch it. The formation spirit pointed at those who arrived here within 10 days. You all have the qualifications to enter the 12 palaces as outer sect disciples. Follow me if you're willing. The 13 people hurriedly followed. Didn't they come here for fated chances? Hunyo didn't mind, she just followed Ling Han. Phone reading was more refreshing. Chapter 503. True Phoenix. In the legends, true phoenixes stood side by side with true dragons, and true dragons were the strongest divine beasts. For example, the 9 dragons tyrant body art that Ling Han cultivated. Why did it use 9 dragons as the standard of power? It was precisely because the power of true dragons was the strongest. Divine beasts, favored by heaven, didn't need to cultivate at all, and possessed terrifying strength upon reaching adulthood. The power of true dragons could even shatter the blue dome of heaven and break open the galaxy, thus becoming the standard of measurement for power in the divine realm. Of course, martial artists could still surpass the power of true dragons, or else there wouldn't be such a thing as the power of 9 dragons. But here, the power of true dragons and true phoenixes was definitely the limit of limits. If Azure Phoenix Divine Empress could truly possess the complete power of true phoenixes, then with a casual pat, this corpse king would scatter into a skeleton once again. The 5 great sects all inherited from the divine realm. For example, Zixuesian was a descendant of a great clan related to lightning in the divine realm, and was extremely powerful. Thus, Azure Phoenix Divine Empress was also very likely a descendant of the divine realm, and possessing a trace of true Phoenix bloodline wouldn't be strange. The 9-eyed Corpse King actually revealed a hint of fear. For a corpse soldier that didn't fear death and didn't know pain, this was an inconceivable thing. That was also because the 9-eyed Corpse King's level was too high, actually deriving self-awareness, and thus knowing how to weigh the situation. However, the corpse soldier's body was still full of brutality, and it very quickly suppressed the fear in its heart. With a loud roar, chong chong chong, ghastly white bone spurs grew out all over its body. Each one was 30 meters long, making it seem like a porcupine. The Corpse King once again charged towards Azure Phoenix Divine Empress. Gray vein-like patterns shone on each bone spur, emitting an aura that made people despair. Ling Han paled in shock and said, "Not good." What Zhu Xian'er and the others feared the most now was hearing Ling Han say not good. Every time he said not good, something bad would definitely happen. "Brother-in-law, can you not say not good?" Li Fengyu said, shivering. Ling Han shook his head and said, "This Corpse King just awakened. Previously, all 9 eyes were opened, and now bone spurs grew out. I think it's still in the process of fusing with those corpses all over its body, and hasn't reached its complete state." Qin Lianyu turned pale with fright and said, "You're saying that after it finishes fusing, it'll become even stronger?" "Of course." Ling Han sighed. His now, Azure Phoenix Divine Empress was only tied with the 9-eyed Corpse King. If this Corpse King became even stronger, wouldn't even Azure Phoenix Divine Empress be unable to suppress it? This Corpse King's appearance seemed to be able to fuse with corpses. If Azure Phoenix Divine Empress was killed and her corpse was also absorbed, then how strong would it become? About to break through the limits of the Shattering Void tier and step into the Divine tier, right? Everyone's hands and feet shivered. If that was really the case, there wouldn't be a single pure land in the entire continent, and they would all be slaughtered clean by this Corpse King, devouring flesh and blood, fusing with corpses and bones, evolving into the strongest corpse soldier in history. Ling Han thought even more, did this have anything to do with the 1,000 Corpse sect? This place should be an ancient battlefield, where the elites of the 5 great sects of the divine realm descended and engaged in a great battle with the rebels. The final result was obviously the burial of the golden age of martial arts 10,000 years ago. The 1,000 Corpse sect was also a great sect of the divine realm, so they definitely had a way to escape the concoction of the last realm pill. Then, they would be able to play some tricks here in secret, turning the corpses that should have decomposed into corpse soldiers. However, with the 5 great sects keeping watch, they didn't dare to do it brazenly, and could only take things slowly. In the end, they created such a monster. Ling Han couldn't be sure, but he could conclude that this definitely had something to do with the 1,000 Corpse sect. After growing bone spurs, the Corpse King's battle prowess increased greatly. Every bone spur was equivalent to a divine spear, covered in vein-like patterns, and could pose a huge threat to even Shattering Void tier elites. Azure Phoenix Divine Empress didn't dare to attack directly, and kept moving her figure to avoid the sharp edges. After all, her physique couldn't compare to the Corpse King's. However, she wasn't dodging blindly either. She kept retaliating with her sword, unleashing a world-shocking sword ray. Moreover, her tail was completely formed from flames, and as it swept past, it caused considerable trouble to the Corpse King. Those flames were definitely not ordinary flames, and possessed shocking destructive power. When they swept past the Corpse King's body, they left behind multiple scorch marks, burning the corpses into ashes. In a short period of time, the 2 great elites were still in a state of being evenly matched. However, just as Ling Han said, this Corpse King was actually like a newborn infant. At the beginning, it only had pure instincts. Killing was its nature, and it only moved according to its instincts. However, as it battled, it learned how to use its power, and it itself seemed to be growing, becoming more and more terrifying. This change was very obvious, because those corpses on its body were fusing together, as if they weren't hard bones, but were made of sand. In the process of fusing, the Corpse King's body was also slowly shrinking, But its power was increasing. Ling Han's heart trembled, and he said previously, it was only over 10,000 corpse soldiers attacking together. But now it's 1,000, then 100, and finally only one remains. Everyone was smart, and immediately understood. A decrease in numbers wasn't a good thing. On the contrary, this was the worst possible situation. No matter how united 10,000 people were, could the power blasted out reach the superposition of 10,000 parts of power? Definitely not. But 1,000 people, each person's power multiplied tenfold, and then attacking together, who would be stronger? Not to mention 100 or 10 people. When there was only one person left, the power would be multiplied by 10,000 times, and that would be the complete power of 10,000 people, without the slightest bit of discount. The Corpse King was advancing in this direction. Azure Phoenix Divine Empress obviously came out as well. Her sword's momentum was even more urgent. Pu sword ray slashed on the Corpse King's body, continuously sweeping off broken bones, but for a corpse soldier's colossal body, this was completely a small matter. Moreover, as its body became smaller, the Corpse King's power became stronger and stronger, and its defense became stronger and stronger. Moreover, the area of defense was still shrinking. This really wasn't a pleasant piece of news. After less than half a day, the Corpse King's body had already shrunk by half, and was only 150 meters tall, but the bloody light in its eyes was more than twice as strong, making one's heart feel like it was about to burst. Pa! The Corpse King's movements stiffened, and another eye actually grew out on its forehead. 10 eyes. 9 eyes was the 9th layer of the Shattering Void tier. Then what about 10 eyes? It definitely couldn't become God tier. But its battle prowess would at least increase by another star. The Shattering Void tier's battle prowess was extremely terrifying in the first place. And wanting to increase one star's battle prowess was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Now that the Corpse King further fused with its body, it finally obtained a qualitative change, its whole body's aura skyrocketing. Hong, the entire Ghost Lock Valley collapsed. The Corpse King attacked again, its bone spikes shocking the heavens, collapsing stars as if it was destroying the world. Azure Phoenix Divine Empress finally revealed a cautious expression, reached out and swiped the Heavenly Phoenix sword, and said, "Open." Wang, the patterns on the Heavenly Phoenix sword shone again, and this time it was several hundred times stronger. A giant rainbow phoenix flew out from the sword blade, as if a god had descended, emitting endless divine might. Tool Spirit. 10th Tier Tool Spirit. Chapter 504. Yin Tianzhao humped and said, "Ling Han, I'll leave that thing in your hands for now. I'll retrieve it in the future." And the future? Ling Han's killing intent boiled, and he directly charged over. "Today you'll die." "Haha, are you daydreaming?" Yin Tianzhao retorted, but immediately exclaimed in surprise. "You've actually reached the 8th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier." He humphed again. So what if he was in the 8th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier? There was still an endless distance between him and the flower blossom tier. Xiao, the people who entered the mystery realm appeared one after another. Yukuan Luan by He Shun, and the other older generation of elites on the prodigy roll all advanced into the flower blossom tier. They were well prepared, and finally managed to take the most difficult step with the help of the mystery realm. Once they entered the flower blossom tier, they left their mortal bodies, so every one of them was brimming with confidence, with an indescribable vigor. They too were looking at Ling Han. Previously, in the Jiang clan's martial arts competition to find a spouse, they had all been defeated by Ling Han and Yin Tianzhao. Now that they had advanced into the flower blossom tier, it would be another round of reshuffling. Especially since Ling Han hadn't advanced into the flower blossom tier, so he was completely unqualified to be mentioned in the same breath as them. "Small tower, boost me with power," Ling Han said in his mind. Though the boost of power from the 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier was the most cost-effective, he only had one thought now, and that was to kill Yin Tianzhao and completely end what he had sown. Hong Ling Han's aura soared in a straight line, and instantly broke through to the flower blossom tier. Then it charged all the way up to the 8th layer of the flower blossom tier. All the Flower Blossom tier elites looked sideways at Ling Han. What was going on? How could his tier possibly have such a terrifying change in an instant? This was especially so for Yu Kunlun. At first, he had been brimming with confidence, and wanted to battle with Ling Han to wash away the humiliation of him retreating without a fight. Yet, he had suffered such a sharp rebuke, and the size of the shadow in his heart could be imagined. Yin Tianzhao's expression involuntarily became solemn. Ling Han's battle prowess was too strong. He had experienced it before. Under the situation where his cultivation level was higher, the two of them had still fought to a draw. But now, it was Ling Han who had the advantage in terms of cultivation level, and it was not just by a little. This battle would definitely be difficult to fight. Die! Ling Han brandished his sword. Boom! 10 flashes of sword chi shot out. Yin Tianzhao counterattacked. His control over his power had reached the acme of perfection, and he could completely unleash 100% of his power with just 10%. After all, he could be considered a different kind of deity, so how could he be ordinary? However, Ling Han was too extraordinary. As he brandished the demon birth sword, its might was terrifyingly strong. The dazzling sword light completely enveloped him, and added with the complete advantage in power, he was at a disadvantage. Haha, you only forcibly increased your power to the Flower Blossom tier, and not the true Flower Blossom tier. Yin Tianzhao's eyes were extremely sharp, and he immediately found Ling Han's weakness. What was the strongest ability of the Flower Blossom tier? Being able to use the surrounding spiritual chi to strengthen oneself, amplifying 10% of one's attack power to 100%, or even 100%. Ling Han only possessed the power of the 8th layer of the Flower Blossom tier, but had no way of using the spiritual chi of heaven and earth. This was a shortcoming of cultivation level. However, the difference in power between each minor tier and the Flower Blossom tier was really too great. Thus, the 8th layer of the Flower Blossom tier was enough to make up for the effect of amplifying the spiritual chi of heaven and earth by 10 or even 100 times, allowing Ling Han to still have the upper hand in terms of power. However, this kind of upper hand was no longer as obvious as the 8th layer against the 1st layer. At most, it was only the 2nd layer against the 1st layer. Yin Tianzhao was unafraid, and began to exchange blows with Ling Han. His control over power was too strong, and very soon he stabilized the situation. However, facing the sharpness of the demon birth sword, he still did not dare to take it head-on, and was still at a disadvantage. This was already enough to make all the Flower Blossom tier cultivators slap their teeth. The battle prowess of these two people had at least reached 6 stars of the Flower Blossom tier, suppressing many veteran Flower Blossom tier cultivators. Ling Han, you can't possibly kill me, so you better stop and keep your life. When the time is right, I will come and find you, Yin Tianzhao said with a loud laugh. When the time was right, he naturally meant that he had advanced into the Shattering Void tier, and was qualified to shatter the void and become a god. When he obtained the coordinates and returned to the great Brahma heaven, he would be able to open the divine treasure trove that the Heavenly River King had discovered. There is no future. Today you will definitely die, Ling Han said coldly. He had been accumulating power all this time, and at this moment the mysterious 3000 was already fully prepared. With a stab it turned into 1,000 flashes of sword light. Yin Tianzhao's expression changed. This sword strike was too strong. He did not dare to take it head-on, and immediately turned to leave. Flower Blossom tier cultivators could fly, so he naturally soared into the air, and said, Ling Han, just you wait. No need to wait. Ling Han sheathed his sword, and made a posture of drawing a bow. There was obviously no bow in his hand, but an arrow appeared out of thin air. It was precisely condensed from the spiritual chi of heaven and earth. He then activated the Eye of Truth, probing for Yin Tianzhao's weak point. Xiao, a cold light shot out at a ridiculously fast speed. Ah! Yin Tianzhao screamed. His left rib had already been pierced by an arrow, and green-colored blood splattered everywhere, looking very strange. This left rib was his vital point, and at this moment, it was pierced by a sharp arrow formed from spiritual chi, instantly causing the origin power in his body to leak out like a fountain. His figure twisted and turned and actually slid down from the skies. Ling Han held his sword and chased after him. When Yan Tianzhao fell, he once again unleashed the mysterious 3000. Fear flashed in Yan Tianzhao's eyes. At this moment he truly felt the approach of death. He did not want to die. He had obtained the memories of a god, and he had a 90% chance of becoming a god in the future. Moreover, he still had many tricks that he had not used. If he were to fight to the death with Ling Han, it was still unknown who would emerge victorious. But now everything was too late. 1001 sword light pierced over, and it was Ling Han's strongest killing move. However, his vital point had been injured, and he was slipping down from the skies, so there was no way for him to dodge at all. Under his survival instinct, he formed a seal with both hands, and shot out multiple green webs that interweaved in front of him, doing his best to stop Ling Han. Pew 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 pew, the sword lights were like rain, instantly tearing apart the green webs. At least 500 sword lights poured down on Yan Tianzhao's body. Minced flesh flew continuously, and he was forcefully sliced into a skeleton. Tung tung tung, Yan Tianzhao retreated. His intestines and other internal organs continuously slid out from his abdomen, and multiple sword marks also appeared on his head, revealing a deep wound. Everyone shook their heads. Yan Tianzhao's head had already been blasted apart, and he was now struggling at death's door. At most he would definitely die in a few breaths' time. Yan Tianzhao stared at Ling Han in a daze. His eyeballs had already fallen out, and now only 2 eerie black eye sockets were left, making him look exceptionally terrifying. He still could not believe that just because he had underestimated his opponent, or rather, just because he did not want to fight with Ling Han head-on, he would actually be consigned to eternal damnation. When two sides met on a narrow path, the brave would win. He had actually even forgotten this point. Ha 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 ha, Ling Han, if I die, don't think you'll have it easy either. He composed himself and said loudly, this person previously obtained the Jiang clan's key, and opened up the Sagittarius Palace. That is related to a divine treasury. A secret treasure that even gods would be tempted by. Furthermore, he also has a precious tool that can store it. Pooh! Ling Han's sword pierced through, and completely ended his life. However, the seed had already been planted. Ling Han's gaze swept over, and he saw countless people staring at him with fiery gazes, as if they wanted to swallow him alive. Divine treasury. Chapter 505. Ling Han was fearless and didn't argue because when it came to things like treasures, many people would rather believe it existed. Moreover, when a person was about to die, his words were kind, and Yan Tianzhao's words were extremely destructive. His gaze swept over, and when it landed on Wen Yijian, he immediately waved and said, Junior brother one. Pooh, quite a few people spurted out. Why did Ling Han call Wen Yijian junior brother? The two seemed to be completely unrelated, right? Wen Yijian was also slightly startled, and said, I wonder why Master Ling calls me junior brother? You and I both received the inheritance of the 12 palaces, so of course we're senior brothers. Ling Han laughed loudly. No matter what, he had to drag Wen Yijian down and share some of his firepower. He obviously wasn't afraid of these flower blossom tier warriors now, but it would be difficult if some spiritual infant tier warriors came. Moreover, once the news spread, there might be shattering void tier elites from the middle state that crossed regions to come at all costs. Then, even if he had the Black Tower's protection, could he be a coward for life? Wen Yijian was from the East region, and came to the North region to pick up some benefits, so he obviously had to share some of the pressure. He couldn't be the scapegoat for everything, right? Master Ling really likes to joke. Wen Yijian laughed loudly, looking as if it was beneath him to argue. But in his heart, even if we're senior brothers, I'm still the senior brother. Ling Han laughed mischievously and said, Junior brother one received the Scorpio Palace's inheritance. Dare to make a heart oath and bet that I'm wrong? A heart oath meant swearing on the heart of martial art. If it was fake, one wouldn't be struck by lightning, but it would severely affect the martial artist's cultivation advancement, so it couldn't be done recklessly. Wen Yijian's eyes had a hint of anger, but his face was extremely calm as he said indifferently, Why should I make a heart oath? Senseless. Ling Han didn't say anything more. He swept his eyes over everyone and said, Junior brother 1 and I are both kings of martial arts, and we've both broken through to the Flower Blossom tier. On top of this Flower Blossom tier king grade puppet, he summoned the rock spirit. Come and fight. How many people's blood will splatter in the sky and leave their lives here? The corner of Wen Tianjian's mouth trembled. Why did Ling Han represent him again? Did this person have no ears at all? Didn't he hear what he said? He was even more shocked. In Scorpio Palace, he obtained enormous benefits and finally advanced into the Flower Blossom tier. But at the same time, he obtained a secret art that could conceal his cultivation level. He still appeared to be in the 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier, so how could Ling Han see through him with a single glance? What kind of fucking secret art was this? No matter, take down both of them. The Flower Blossom tier elites all exchanged opinions. Whether it was the inheritance of the 12 palaces or the divine treasure trove, they were both of great importance. They'd rather kill wrongly than miss out. I won't play with you North Region madmen anymore. When Yi Jian suddenly leaped up, Hong, the Flower Blossom tier presence spread out without reservation, and a divine ray blossomed with each step, tearing through the air. Want to leave? Immediately, over a dozen attacks shot over. Even if Wen Yijian's battle prowess was impressive, he had just broken through after all, so how could he withstand so many attacks? He was forced to land. Junior brother 1, let's fight side by side. Ling Han laughed loudly. Wen Yijian's nose almost crooked in anger. He could have left quietly and made a fortune in silence, but Ling Han actually exposed him. Now that he was in danger, it made him extremely gloomy. Ling Han, how did I offend you? Why do you mess with me like this? He said coldly. Not even calling him Grandmaster Ling Han smiled, and said seriously, Junior brother 1, we're one family, so we obviously have to help each other out at this time. Don't worry, I'll protect you. Protect your sister, I could have just swaggered away. When Yi Jian gritted his teeth, but the situation before him obviously didn't go his way. Thankfully, those spiritual infant tier cultivators from before had already returned. Otherwise, if those elites had made a move, he could only wait to be captured. Now, he could stake it all and fight his way out of the encirclement. Ling Han, I will definitely settle this score with you. As he swore, he stood together with Ling Han. The two of them, together with the rock spirit, formed a triangle, their backs against each other. Ha, that's in the future, Ling Han said indifferently. Lu Yutong and the others all tactfully didn't go up. If they went up now, not only would they be of no help to Ling Han, they'd instead become a burden, which made them feel uncomfortable. Even though their growth speed was very fast, and they even fought their way into the North Region's prodigy role, they still couldn't help Ling Han out of trouble. Come, whoever wants the secret treasure, make your move. Ling Han laughed loudly. However, you guys have to think clearly. I'm still a heaven-grade alchemist, and if you harm a single hair of mine, be careful that the entire alchemist society doesn't get along with you. The Flower Blossom tier elite's faces twisted, feeling that Ling Han was both courageous and a bit of a scoundrel. Fighting one against many, this was naturally courageous. However, he brought out his identity as a heaven-grade alchemist to threaten them, making it hard for them to avoid having their hands and feet bound when they attacked. Wasn't this extremely scoundrel? This didn't seem like an 18-year-old youngster at all mature and slick. He was practically an old fox. Take him down, try not to hurt him. The Flower Blossom tier elites reached a consensus. A heaven-grade alchemist's weight was too heavy, and it was fine to kill him secretly, but killing Ling Han in public would definitely spread throughout the world. At that time, whoever succeeded would definitely be pushed out as a scapegoat by the sect to appease the anger of the world's alchemists. Oh, I didn't get the secret treasure, but I have to go to die. Who would do this? Thus, everyone hoped that others would accidentally kill off Ling Han, and they definitely wouldn't do it themselves. Go! Over 20 Flower Blossom tier elites attacked together. The momentum was very vast. Ling Han, Wen Yijian, and the rock spirit all roared loudly, brandishing their swords and pulling out their fists, all charging forward. Hu Niu stomped her feet in anger, but it was a chaotic battle now.